We'll now call the December meeting of the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission to order. Good morning, everybody. My name is Angie Box, and I'm the chairman of the commission. Want to welcome all our guests and visitors. We're happy to be at Ducks Unlimited with our amazing partners. So thank you all for hosting us. We have a lot of visitors here today. James E. Moore. You here, James? Somewhere? Okay. Matthew Robinson. Great, thank you for being here. J.W. Worthen. Thank you, J.W. Matt Simcox. Thank you, sir. Andy Demetrian. Great, thank you for being here. Daniel Rogers. Great. And Andrea White. Great. Courtney Archer. Great, thank you for being here. Dr. Alan Solomon. Great, thank you. Mike Kelly. Commercial fisherman. Okay. Okay, great. Hey. Clay Young, North American Caviar. Hey, hello, Clay. Dan Robinson. Great, thank you. Brian Thompson. Let's see. Say Dan Robinson. Okay. Yeah, making sure it was there. Scott Fisher. Great. Robin Pope. Great. Thank y'all for being here. Sandy Stacks. Bluff City Canoe Club. Great. Thank you, Sandy. And Jake Davis with Bassmaster. Thank you, Jake. All right. At this time, I'd like Ms. Danette, can you please call the roll?
Here.
Tommy Woods.
Here.
Monty Ballou.
Here.
Stan Butts.
Here.
Wally Childress.
Here.
Bill Cox.
Here.
Chris Devaney. Chip Saltzman.
Here.
Steve Jones.
Here.
Brian McLaren.
Here.
Kent Woods.
Here.
Hank Wright.
Here.
Angie Box.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Danette. This time I'd like to call on Director Jason Maxidon for any reports you have.
Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the commission. First, I'd like to introduce some staff that have either been newly appointed or promoted up. Daniel Cox, if you would please stand up. Daniel, our new Associate General Counsel. He's going to be working with General Counsel Troy Grimes. Welcome, Daniel. Next is Mark Thurman. Mark was the Fisheries Program Manager in Region 3. He's promoted to the Chief of Fisheries Division. Mark's going to be hearing from him shortly about a few things. Abigail Gomez, and I don't think Abigail is with us today, but Abigail got promoted yesterday to our Regional Business Administrator in the Jackson and the Region 1 office. So welcome aboard, Abigail. Vincent Pontello. Vincent, all right. Vincent has been working in our Biodiversity Division as Assistant Chief, and he's recently promoted to the Wildlife Program Manager in Region 3. So welcome aboard in that position. Congratulations, Vince. So commissioners, as you know, hunting season is in full swing, and now TWA has been supporting new and beginning hunters who are getting excited about learning more. If you'll turn your attention to the screen, we've got several of these hunters. We're going to show a few slides. If Don, if y'all want to just kind of roll through them as I talk. We host ladies muzzleloader hunt at Buffalo Ridge. We have several different youth events across the state. We have a lot of staff members who have worked with volunteers and worked with volunteers to work on these projects through weekends. And I'm proud of all the staff's hard work and the way that they participate and introduce a lot of new folks into the hunting and fishing. You know that we like to recognize some folks who've had successful hunts. And this first one is Andrew Smith, who harvested his first deer with his granddad at Laurel Hill on the Laurel Hill Youth WMA hunt. Also, 15-year-old Evan Delilio, who bagged his first deer at the Humphreys County Youth Hunt. If you rolled it forward yet, Don, on the – okay. All right. We got Andrew up. Thank you, Don. So we talk about how important it is to recruit the next generation. As you all know, we've been working hard on our R3 effort, retention, recruitment, and reactivation of hunters. And it just shows some of these events that we're able to carry out to be able to recruit some of these new folks into it. So thank you, staff, for doing that, and congratulations to all those that harvested animals on these hunts. Also want to recognize one of our staffers, one of our own, John Ellis. who recently put on an event that's called Project Healing Waters. Project Healing Waters is dedicated to the physical and emotional rehabilitation of disabled active military service personnel and disabled veterans through fishing. At the Project Healing Waters outing hosted by Tellico Hatchery, John Ellis was presented the Patriot Fly Award and the Distinguished Service Award by the National Project Healing Waters Board. And that's what you see here on the screen with his award that they presented him with. John coordinates this event at the hatchery along with other staff every year. Local guides and partners provide a event. So we're grateful to all the partners that help with this event. We're grateful for what they do for these veterans. We're grateful to have more than 30 veterans working for us at TWA. We want to thank all of our women for their sacrifices to help keep us safe. We're proud of John for his work putting on a great event. I'm proud of the support of Project Healing Waters and what they do for our veterans. So thank you to all who were involved in that effort. At this time, I just want to say thank you to Ducks Unlimited. We are very appreciative of being hosted today. Thank you for allowing us to use your facility. Not only did we get to use their facility, they provided lunch for us today, and we got to view Wings Over Water. If you have a chance to view this film, I highly encourage you to do this. Mr. Putnam's going to come over in just a minute, and maybe he'll talk a little bit more about the Healing Waters event. Not Healing Water, but the Wings Over Water event. I was able to view that at the Tennessee Aquarium in Chattanooga, and it's still being shown there. It's a 3D event that talks about several species that migrate, and it talks about the importance of our prairie wetlands. So if you have a chance to view that, especially if you have children, it's a great showing. Try to take time to go over and view that. So thank you very much for allowing us to preview that today with our staff and the commission. I want to talk a little about the great partnership. As many of you may know, some of you may not know, but one of my previous positions with the agency is working in wetlands. I've got 22 years, and most of that was spent here in West Tennessee and working in wetlands. So my passion is typically dealing with waterfowl or wetland bird species. And I think Ducks Unlimited is probably one of our greatest conservation partners that we have in the state. So thank you, Ducks Unlimited, for all that you do for this agency and all that you do for conservation. And we have an incredible partnership here with them. They've invested nearly $17 million in wetland conservation in Tennessee and contributed to more than 49,000 acres of conserved wetlands here in our state. With phase 2 of duck season coming in this coming Monday, it's fitting for us to be here at Ducks Unlimited and to recognize the work that they put into supporting waterfowl populations and habitat. So at this time, I'd like to recognize the Chief Operating Officer of Ducks Unlimited, Mr. Adam Putnam. Thank you, Adam.
Well, thank you very much. And Madam Chairman, thank you for being here and bringing the commission here, and welcome everyone. We're honored to have you. I'm a new Tennessean myself, thanks to Ducks Unlimited, and certainly love and appreciate the partnership that we have with this agency. And we have over 150 people who work in this building, and we're bringing more people in on a regular basis and making them Tennesseans too, and Tennessee hunters and anglers and an important part of this economy. And we've been here for about 26 years. We moved here from Chicago. I'm a Floridian, a native Floridian and a recovering ag secretary from Florida. And I can look you in the eye and promise you, I'm glad we moved out of Chicago, because this is a whole lot better to call this a cold winter day than what they're dealing with right now. So Ducks Unlimited doesn't do anything without partners. We move mud, we're solutions oriented, and we do it day in and day out with partners in the NGO community, whether it's turkeys or pheasants or quail or Rocky Mountain elk or whitetail, and then with our state and federal partners like Tennessee Wildlife Resources. That's what enables us to take 4,000 of those dinners that we do around the country each and every year. And many of you are nodding knowingly. That means you probably got one of those prints underneath your spare bedroom that your wife won't let you hang up. But the dollars that are raised from those types of activities get matched with a duck stamp dollar and a Tennessee agency dollar and a U.S. Department of Interior dollar. And that goes back onto the landscape multiplied 4 or 5 times over. That's our model. And the results are in. The bird report came in about a month ago that said that tragically, we're losing our bird species across North America. We've lost about 1/3 of our bird species across North America since 1970, with one exception, waterfowl. And that is the model, the North American wildlife model in action, that those excise taxes that hunters and anglers are paying, leveraged in the NGO world with organizations like DU and our partners, with our state and federal agencies, is making a difference for habitat on the landscape that's bucking the trend. And 1970 wasn't that long ago. I mean, everyone, many of you, almost all of you in this room, if I may be so judgmental, own a piece of that success. You know, we think about conservation wins being Teddy Roosevelt or being Aldo Leopold. We all own a piece of that success since 1970, that we were a part of making that happen as partners and as collaborators. So thank you, commissioners, for what you do. I know it's not always easy. You get a lot of hard issues put in front of you. But at the end of the day, we all want to leave the world better than we found it. And we all share a passion for getting more people involved in outdoor traditions, in whatever form they may take. And that's why we were excited to show you the film. I hope you liked it. It has proven very popular, particularly with our target demographic of elementary school aged children, who we want them to understand why the prairie potholes matter and what the magic of migration is, just as well as they understand the importance of the Amazon or the Everglades. This is our story to tell, and we're proud to have partnered with Audubon to tell it. So thank you. Welcome. We're delighted to have you. You've got y'all rated better snacks from our team than we ever get. We don't ever have Funyuns and Twinkies in the back of our meetings. But again, thank you to the staff, to the men and women in law enforcement, and to our public servants on the commission who work hard under the radar day in and day out to leave the world a better place. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and welcome.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you, Director Maxidon. And if anyone watching gets a chance, please go see Wings Over Water. It's incredible, very important part of the habitat that we need to understand. So thank y'all for letting us see that. It's great. Today is, I want to remind everybody, it's committee day for the commission. We're going to hear from a few of the committees, Fisheries and Budget. And at this time, we're going to have a little change in the agenda. I'm going to call on Communications Director Emily Buck to start us off, please. Thank you.
All right, before I can get going here, I gotta get appropriately dressed. Well, everyone, we've got some exciting news today, and we want to take a moment to highlight one of our really incredible partner groups, something that we're really proud to support. So Casting for Recovery is a program that supports and empowers women who are going through a difficult time in their life facing breast cancer. We have been able to support them for 3 years now with our pink patch hats. So as you can see here, now I'm a big lover of pink in general. So, I always am sporting one of these. And, we have these available in our e-store, and it helps support such a great program. So Casting for Recovery, they offer retreats for women facing breast cancer. You can find that information on castingforrecovery.org if you have a loved one who is dealing with this type of situation. The next one coming up is September 8th through 10th, 2023. Make sure you get on there and book that up, because I believe they fill up pretty quickly, don't they? It was supposed to be our Director of Marketing, Jennifer Wisniewski, presenting this. She unfortunately was unable to attend, and she gave me the opportunity to do it. And I just want to say, personally, I'm really proud to be able to stand up here and offer this support to this great group today. A year ago, my own mother was diagnosed with cancer. And just about everyone in this room, I would suspect, has a loved one, a family member, or a friend who has gone through this difficult situation. And it's so important for people to be able to find a little bit of joy, a little bit of comfort, social interactions when you're going through those tough times. So today we are proud to present this very large $8,000 check to Casting for Recovery. Miss Angie over here. And one last little note here too, we have a really great book with some pictures from the 5th annual East Tennessee retreat. We'll leave it on this table over here in case anyone would like to take a look later.
I'd just like to say thank you very much. I am Denise Rumkus, and I am the program coordinator in training, or in transition, I should say, for the Casting for Recovery East Tennessee program, which is near and dear to my heart. I was a participant in 2011 with my mother and returned to volunteer each year and never left until Lindsay Long, who was the program coordinator forever, sucked me in to kind of jump in there and take over. So I want to thank you so, so kindly from the bottom of my heart for this wonderful donation. It really, really helps out our program. Lindsay, if I can have you come up, and Chris Mirrock, she is our program leader. If you can just come on up for just a quick minute and take a quick picture. Great. All right, Lindsay, you want to just mention a couple of people that I may have forgotten, Andy and Jennifer? Yeah.
Lieutenant Andy Collins called me one day, and he collects patches, and he came up with the idea for the pink patch program, and he had to he had designed it and had to do some work to get it approved. And so he called me and said, what a perfect fit. Women fly fishing for breast cancer. It's a good movement for the affected area, whether you're casting, whether you're stripping the line in. Being on the water is good for the neuropathy. And Jennifer Wisniewski, she was back there behind the scenes just pushing. So this wouldn't have happened without Lieutenant Andy Collins and Jennifer Wisniewski. And the commission and everybody that had their little part in this, we sure do appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. That was wonderful. Very proud of that. Okay, we are now going to go back to the original agenda. We're going to call on Mr. Matt Simcox, please. Tennessee Wildlife Federation.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Commission, for having us. You probably noticed that Mike and Kendall aren't here today. Mike had a previous engagement in Montana. He's speaking about Asian carp. And Kendall is recovering from COVID, so we hope that he gets some good rest. I'd like to start off with playing a brief video. If I can figure this out.
In your community, wherever you are, there are most likely children who are going without meals.
If you've ever been hungry, you'll understand what it's like. You can't provide for yourself. You can't provide for your family. It's debilitating. And this program allows us to help people out, offer them a helping hand, feed them, feed their kids.
Our community receives literally thousands of pounds of processed meat every year. We're able to utilize it throughout the year for the meals that we're serving to our community.
That's really how it should be. That's how we all should be living. We're so blessed with the availability of natural food and the ability to go hunting, go fishing, enjoy the nature. As a community, have that bring us together so that nobody's left out. Nobody has to worry about where their next meal's coming from. The next deer I get is going back to the program because I want to be able to give back to something that helped me in my time of need.
There is no cons to this program. Everyone from the hunter to the processor to the end recipient of the food, everybody benefits from this.
It makes a huge impact to us serving the schools and the children that we do. We couldn't do it without partners like the Tennessee Wildlife Federation.
Matt is really always there to assist us with anything that we need. We give him a call and we get it in the mail. It's probably one of the greatest things about working with a place is knowing that they're here for us and that they support us completely. 5 years ago, we passed by our Giles County Health Center and seeing people lined out the door the week before Thanksgiving to get bags of deer meat and food that could be given to them. And you're seeing them walk out of there and you can see your label on that meat. Man, that changed my life with it. I mean, I will never not do Hunters for the Hungry program.
Well, as mentioned earlier, my name is Matt Simcox. I've had the privilege of managing Hunters for the Hungry here in Tennessee for the last 15 years. We're excited that this year we're getting to celebrate our 25 years of having this program here in the state. According to Feeding America, 1 in 8 Tennesseans face hunger. That means that they don't know where they're going to get their next meal. Unfortunately, 1 in 6 children face hunger. Those statistics are real. And you just heard from a couple on that video that hunger is a real thing here in Tennessee. So what has this program been able to accomplish in the last 24 years? Since 1997, we've provided enough venison to feed 8.7 million servings. Now, you probably noticed Neyland Stadium up there. That's enough venison to feed every person at a University of Tennessee home game for 12 years. So just think about that. Now, last year alone, we had over 129,000 pounds donated, providing enough venison to feed over 500,000 servings just last year alone. Now, to put that into perspective, that's about enough venison to feed everyone at a Vanderbilt home game for 12 years. Now, all jokes aside, we couldn't have this success without our great partners, the support of our great partners. There are 4 keys that make this program successful: funders, processors, deer hunters, and of course, our hunger relief agencies. Predictable and sustainable funding is crucial for the success of this program. Predictable funding is important to processors and to hunters. We have to have the predictability to gain and maintain the trust of our processor partners. Likewise, for hunters that want to donate the deer, our goal is to have enough funds each season so that no hunter is turned away. They can donate that deer free of charge. We've been able to accomplish that for a few years now. We've completely reshaped our program, and we're not turning any deer away. And that's our goal for the future, is to not turn any deer away. We currently partner with 73 processors all across the state. Each of these processors are certified and inspected by the Department of Ag. The Department of Agriculture is a huge partner that we have, especially with recruiting new processors. Just this season alone, we were able to recruit 14 new processors, the most we've ever had in a single season. The important thing about recruiting new processors is that not only does it broaden our reach across the state and make it easier for hunters to donate and get involved, but for every new processor that we add to the program, just in their first year, on average, they are getting enough venison donated through their business to provide 3,500 meals to their community. So it's important. We're not going to stop recruiting. Now, back in 2020, when COVID hit, we saw a lot of processors that just completely quit taking deer due to the high demand they were having to process beef. So we had to jump up our recruiting game then and try to recruit as many as possible. Staffing continues to be the number one challenge for processors. They can't find help. I'm sure some of you are dealing with that too, but they can't find help. That's why it is so important that we can offer them sustainable and predictable funding year after year. Now, once we partner with a processor, then comes the hunters. On average, we have around 8,000 individual hunters that donate to this program every season. 2,000 hunters donate a whole deer to our program. Each deer that they donate provides 168 servings. And think about that. One deer could feed everyone in this room, possibly twice. 6,000 individual hunters donate to our Pounder Pack program, where they're getting their deer to take home to their family. They're giving us a pack or a pound of that so that we can share it to their community. Once we get the hunters to harvest these deer and donate them, and then we have our processors processing them and putting the meat in nice little packages, then we rely on our hunger relief partners. We partner with all 5 Feeding America food banks in the state, as well as over 125 local community-oriented agencies. These agencies tell me every year just how thankful they are for Hunters for the Hungry. Many of them tell me that it's the only meat that they can count on every year. Dependable and sustainable. I get asked a lot about CWD. I'm sure everyone in here probably does. How has CWD affected Hunters for the Hungry? Well, back in 2018 when it was found, we had already written protocols on how we would manage this program and mitigate CWD and continue to take donations. Once it was found, I think I was notified on December 14th. I don't think I'll ever forget that day. We were able to implement these protocols and make sure that no positive venison, donated venison, was going out to our hunger relief partners. With the help of TWRA, we're able to test every deer that's donated. Last year alone, we had 923 deer donated in unit CWD. That made up over 35% of our statewide donations. Of the 920, only 60 came back positive. We were able to dispose of those properly, making sure that they didn't leave the process and go out into the hunger relief agencies. So far this season, we've talked to just this week, we've talked to over half of our processors, and we have well over 1,000 deer donated so far. It's shaping up to be a good season. These processors are busy too. I'm sure if you hunt, you've seen that in the last couple of weeks, just how busy they are. One thing to note is this fiscal year, this program budget comes out to $412,000. Right now, halfway through our fiscal year, we have a gap of $150,000. So we would respectfully request from the commission to consider helping us with $75,000 of that for the season. That will help us to achieve and maintain that goal of not having to turn any hunter away. So with that, is there any questions?
Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Cox?
What other fundraising efforts do you, does TVF have? I know years ago you used to have churches that held fundraisers and donated some money.
We do. Most of our funds come in from private gifts, online gifts. We have grants that come in through various funders. We also rely heavily on the license checkoff. That generates around $60,000 annually for that.
Commissioner Saltzman.
What's the total budget of your whole year?
It's 412,000.
Total
That's
budget
total.
for Hunters for the Hungry is 412,000.
Yes, sir.
And you have $150,000 hole.
Yes, sir.
That's a pretty big hole.
Yes, sir.
And
We're halfway through our fiscal year right now.
that's salaries,
That includes
processing,
everything.
that's everything.
Yes, sir.
And so as I'm kind of looking kind of where our total funding's been, I think that's what this page is, right? So if your budget's 412,000, how much have you raised outside of us?
Well, right now we've raised, I want to say, so far, everything except the 150, that's where we're at. You could take out probably around 20,000 from the checkoffs that's come in so far, maybe 30. But everything else comes in through private, through grants, foundations.
And I know I'm
So-
putting you on the spot. You've
Yeah.
got your guys not here. They probably know the answer top of their head. But Madam Chairman, I'd be interested in looking at their total budget, what they're spending on salaries, what are they spending on everything before we just blank check. Look, great cause, but just like my dad, most everybody's dad in the room says, you run out of money before you run out of good causes. And I'd like to get a little bit more detail on your whole budget, what you're spending it on before we write you a check.
Sure.
That's my 2 cents.
Okay, Commissioner Blue?
Hey, Matt, just 2 questions. One, what's the cause for the deficit this year? I mean, what is it just prices or is it just?
Yeah, well, we actually increased our processor's fee last year. In the last couple of years, our budget increased because our goal had changed to not turn any hunter away. Previously, we had a certain amount of funding for processing. Once that was met, then we were depending on the hunters to fill that gap and pay when they.
So we've paid for
process.
more processing
Oh, absolutely.
Is the main cause for the deficit, you're saying?
Pretty much. In addition to that, we're doing more marketing now. We're trying to get more hunters.
Mhm.
We've done surveys and found out that there's still a lot of hunters that don't even know about this. So we're focused on a lot of marketing and using Facebook to localize market in certain areas where we have processors.
Right. And I agree with Commissioner Saltzman. To look at it, the total of it would be a great idea. But on the flip side of that, I've worked with Matt for several years. I ran a processing deal similar to the Hunters for the Hungry, and we worked hand in hand for probably a decade. And they do a great job and do feed a lot of hungry people, and a little extra meat on the table at certain times is a great thing. And I appreciate the job that you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions from the commission? Kent Woods. Yes, sir.
Could you get us commissioners and maybe some of the agency staff a list of the processors? I saw the map a while ago,
Mhm.
but as far as names, I mean, I've had people ask me, where can I take this deer? And none of us has ever saw a list of the name of the
Sure.
processors. If we could get that, I believe that'd be
Yeah, we can do that.
useful for us to spread the word a little bit of
Absolutely.
where y'all are at.
Absolutely. And on our website, we have a complete list of every processor. And if you pull it up on your phone or a mobile device, it uses the GPS tracker in your phone to show you where the closest ones are. But we can get you a list. Yes, sir.
Great. Any other questions? Commissioner Butt?
Several months back, when we were reviewing this, and I proposed 50,000 to go to Hunters for the Hungry, and Chairman Cox said, let's wait until budget time. And so I think I'd like to ask Chairman Cox, if he will, to weigh in on that from a budget standpoint and bring us up to speed, if he would, please.
I think now that he's made a presentation, I believe, and I'll leave this to the chairman's discretion, that we would discuss it with staff and perhaps put it on the agenda for next month.
That's correct. I was about to say
Is
that
that
would
what
be
you
great.
wanna do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that'd be great.
I'd be interested to know if it's licensed dollars we're talking about or federal dollars. I think we do. So I think it just, staff come back with a recommendation next month.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Madam
Thank
Chairman.
you. Okay. At this time, I'll call on Chairman Cox with the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Tim Churchill, are you ready?
Sorry for this busy slide, but these are our budget expansion requests for this month. There are really 4 projects here, but 2 of the projects, the gun range projects, need budget expansions for this current fiscal year and for next fiscal year. So I'm just gonna, a lot of detail is up in these things, and I'm just going to move into just sort of describing these various projects. But the first one is the Ed Carter unit. There we go. OHV project, which is a current project with the Nature Conservancy. The Ed Carter unit up at North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area in Campbell and Claiborne counties. This is a recently purchased conservation easement, and the idea here is to kind of mitigate the effects that OHV has had on that area over the years. That's not a photo of that area. It's a photo of the kind of damage that OHV, heavy OHV use can cause. Again, this is a partnership project with the Nature Conservancy. We own the conservation easement at Ed Carter unit. They own the ground and the trees. So they, essentially we have recreational rights and management rights, but the land is actually owned by the Nature Conservancy. They went out and got a grant from Yamaha and asked us if we could match it with federal money. And so PR funds that are requested here, we'd budget $120,000 and they'd pay their part for the project and we'd pay our part for the project, and we'd get reimbursed 100% for it from the feds. So that's the first one, $120,000 in FY23. Let's see. Can you go to the next slide? I don't know why this is the big one. This is for this current fiscal year. This is a tract of land on the west side of Catoosa Wildlife Management Area. It is an interesting place in that it's large, but it's got a fair bit of amenities built on it. There's a house, there's horse barns and that sort of thing. And we think that it can be quite an important center for education of various types, hunting education, outdoor education. There's even there's some ponds on it. There's small running rivers, a small running river through it as well, or stream. We're asking for $7 million, and that will cover the property, which we've agreed with the seller that would be $6.25 million. But we know we're going to have some pretty substantial survey costs for the marking and all that as well. So we're asking for a little bit more, and we are asking for some equipment that's present on the farm now, and it's used, and we've looked it over, and it's all in real good shape. And so that's going to cost a few $100,000 as well. And I think put the list in here. Maybe not. I'm going backwards now. There we go. Well, this is some of the photos of the amenities there on the farm, including a kayak down in the lower right. This was part of the brochure that the seller put out. I've been up there to tour. Region 3 has been pretty well all over this place, and it is a very special place. And it's a good price considering some of the amenities that are built in. It's a fair price, and it's below fair market value, below fair or appraised value. So this can be quite a facility, sort of a Buffalo Ridge East kind of situation. I'm not sure what the immediate plans are. I just wanted to show this one as well. Some of the farm equipment, you can't see it very well, but the total at the bottom is $309,000. And then we went through and looked at manufacturer, wholesale new prices for this equipment, and it was well over 500. So we're getting a couple $100,000 in savings there for some good equipment that's needed, both there and even in other places, can be used in other places. Any questions about Catoosa Ridge? Because this is probably a good time to take questions.
Sure. Any questions? Commissioner
Just
Ramey.
for the record, Tim, how many acres currently is Catoosa in total?
Oh my. Do you all have a feel for that? 80,000 acres.
Thank you. Any other questions about this from committee or commissioners? Go ahead.
Okay, so the next one up is the Montgomery County Shooting Range, and this is again to upgrade those facilities. They had an audit, a safety audit about a year ago, and found that a lot of the berms weren't high enough, and there's some substantial work that needs to be done to get this place really safe and get it up and running, where there's a lot of opportunity available there as was intended. So we're asking for in FY23 to start that project with $315,000. The agency, we would budget the $315,000. The Wildlife Foundation would pay the match, so we would be reimbursed 100% with federal funds. In this case, this range, because it's essentially, we're making it safe and making it operable, the feds, I think, are going to consider this a 10% match project. So we can, our grant will pay for 90% of the work to be done, and that'll be helpful to the foundation. In FY24, to finish it up, is another $1,085,000. Total combined is $1.4 million for the two funding years. Question?
One question I'd have on this, how many shooters are going through there every year?
Is Joey here? I can't answer that. Sorry.
Okay. If you can get that to us, I'd be interested.
Joey will have to do that.
Thank you.
All right.
Let me ask you a quick question. If Joey's not here, do you think he's going to make it in the next little while, or we have to catch him? I'd like to know what TWF is going to do. I mean, the Fish Foundation going to do different they've done in the past. You don't have any, do you know?
I think they're planning on having somebody manage it, or have somebody managing it right now. So that's all I know.
Maybe he'll get here.
Oh, sorry. And then last expansion, well, last two expansions, if you count the 2 years, area in Johnson County, new chairman of the recreation board up there is very interested in having a gun range up there and an archery range as well. And they would be looking at a brand new range. Their ask is for $315,000 to get started and get all the due diligence out of the way. Now these gun ranges, when we do these federal grants, there's a whole lot of upfront stuff that has to be done that costs money. There's environmental assessments, there's archaeological phase ones and so on. So it's nice to give them, even if they can't get the whole thing done in what's left of this fiscal year, which is a for sure, at least give them something to get started with. And that's the idea with the 315. And then the next year following up with 1,185,000 combined 1.5 million for those two funding years. We're still working on the details of where that thing is actually going to be located, but they're getting close. So, any questions about that one? So I guess that is all I got. If I go backwards to the very beginning, it sort of shows those totals again, but you probably got it in your books as well. But anyway, 6 expansions, 4 projects, 2 of them cover 2 years. That's the thing to remember. So, anyway.
Chairman Cox,
Yes, ma'am.
a quick one. Do you have, like the Catoosa property, do you have any pictures or plans on the Doe Mountain in Montgomery? Or
I do not.
Okay.
I don't have I mean, I've got one of Doe Mountain, but I'm thinking they're going to change the location of it. So I don't have it with me anyway. So,
Okay.
But it's nothing more than just pretty well drawn out on a map.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tim, let me, what
Thank
is,
you.
ask you or Jason, either one, what is the importance of the timeliness of this vote? Does it really need to go this month, or is there something waiting on it? And here's why I asked, because I thought that we were going to run, and they know it, but they haven't voted on it. Now, Commissioner McLaren, is that something that the R3 committee wants to look at, or is it, if they had any objections in the conference call, they should have raised them, or how does that? Because I've got some questions about Montgomery County and how they're operating. I've also got some questions about who's liable for the money. If it fails, we got a 20-year amortization. Who's responsible for that in all of these situations, not just these two, but all these situations. So I wonder if it's been through R3 and y'all have blessed it.
We have not voted on this in R3. It has been on an agenda in a conference call, but we've not voted on anything. Do we know if it's come through the shooting sports coordinator through that process like we discussed that the new proposals were going to yet?
The new shooting sports coordinator has not finished the form, Mr. Chairman. So if you would like, if you'd wish, we'll just go back, have her finish that form, have both entities fill those forms out and run it through the R3 committee vote and come back to you in January.
If that's not going to cause a huge timeliness in project.
This is just for the gun ranges?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, we're good with that. Commissioner Butt.
Commissioner Woods is very close to this project. I'd like for him to weigh in just a little bit on the discussion that's taking place and the importance of this project up into his areas. If he would take just a few minutes to do that, please.
The project was brought to my attention by Captain Singh, TWRA, and he and I visited the property, spent the better part of the day up there, met with the director, and actually toured the property. Had local leaders, the sheriff, several county commissioners, and some more community leaders that attended that tour, and they were all in support of it. It would be arranged, it would be open to the public. That's a very remote, economically distressed area, and the youth find it hard to find things to do up there. And they like to hunt, they like to shoot, and there's just not a lot of opportunity for them. And he has submitted a very detailed plan. I don't know, Tim didn't have that today, but I do have copies of it. Broke down into a 5-year plan if anyone would like to see it.
Anything else?
Commissioner Box, did you have a
Good,
question?
thanks.
Did you have a question? All right, go ahead.
Just one question, Commissioner Woods. Was it going to be what all was it? Was it going to be like a 5-stand or sporting clays or trap or pistol rifle or just all that or
All of the above.
all the above?
Yes.
And is it the same? I wonder, does anybody know exactly what they're going to do with the money at Montgomery County? I know they're revamping that facility, but is it just going to go to new equipment, new machines, new concrete, or?
Joey's ETA is 216, but I know some of it, Commissioner Blue, was going to be for berms. There needs to be some renovation of the berms where they've been shot. They've just had excessive shooting. There's going to be some reclamation. And Commissioner McLaren had asked me about a pro shop, and I don't know about that one. We need to, when he gets here, we'll find out about that. Maybe we can catch him at the break and have him speak after a break.
Yeah. Okay. So if Joey shows up, he can maybe answer some of these questions, but I'm going to suggest for the committee that I'd entertain a motion for expansion number 1 and 2, and the final 3, 4, 5, and 6, we table until it goes through R3 and comes back perhaps next month. So if I'd be looking for a motion to that effect, or if you want to pursue all of it, then I'd entertain that motion. Somebody on the committee.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that Budget Committee consider the expansion at Ed Carter Unit OHV in the amount of $120,000 for fiscal year 23 be recommended to the full commission.
Do I hear a second? Second. Any more discussion on the committee? All in favor on the committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Commissioner Jones, do you have another motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the Catoosa Ridge acquisition for fiscal year 23 and the amount of $7 million. I'll make the motion. If I get a second, that'll open it up for discussion. I know that's a big number, and but I also know that we probably got some real estate deadlines that we have to make, so we need to be discussing it.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. Discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Madam Chairman, I believe that's for that. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Frank Fiss, Deputy Director.
Chairman Cox, I had one other question briefly. I had a call from John White, who is assisting over at Horton Park at their shooting range, that they were seeking funds for some new machines, $36,000. Was the agency contacted from him about that? Does anybody know?
I do not know, Commissioner Butt. We will check with Miss Lacy and see if she's been contacted, but to my knowledge, no.
Okay. All right. Well, I told him that I would check into that and ask about that if the agency possibly could assist with that funding. So just wanted that noted going forward.
I would recommend that we have him fill out the new form that Commissioner McLaren is asking about through Lacy, and we will get him a copy of that. And then we'll run it back through the R3 committee.
Thank you. You had mentioned that new form, so it's been completed. So I'll make sure that he's aware of that. Thank you.
All right. Deputy, go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This isn't a budget expansion, but rather a request to move money around that is already in an FY3 budget. We have at her Parsons, we are currently budgeted at $2.5 million to do that large project there, which is one of the Bill Dance signature lakes. We're halfway through the fiscal year, and the Bill Dance team is aware that they can get about $500,000 worth of work done that would do the boat ramp, parking lot, dredging, fishing pier, and courtesy dock. What'll happen with the rest of those funds is it'll just sit there and then possibly be carried forward next year. What we would rather do is put that money to work to to be able to work on other Bill Dance signature lakes so that we can show our partners and ourselves that we can get more than just one lake done in a year. We want to take the advantage, also taking advantage of being able to bulk bid some of these courtesy docks and fishing piers if we package them all together. But what I'm asking your approval for today is to use 1.1 million of the funds that you approved for her Parsons Lake to be used at Browns Creek Lake, Lake Halford, and Old Hickory Lakes, which are at locations that are on the Bill Dance Signature Lake program. So this will allow us to get these three additional lakes at a closer to a phase one where we can start talking about putting up Bill Dance Signature Lake signage, because we're all eager to see more than just one lake come online when we can bring lakes online. The 1.1 million would be used to work on Browns Creek, Lake Halford. Because it's a lot of money that we're moving out of that project, we wanted the commission's approval to do that. So you're aware, we'll still leave 900,000 to get any additional work that we could happen to get done at her Parsons or other places. If we, a lot of this is dependent on what availability we have for weather and how contract come through. So we want to make the best of the money we have to put more signature lake opportunities on the ground. And we'll probably, if we come up short, we have that spring option to come back and talk about expansions at that time. So this is just a request to what I'm calling redistribute the funds. There's no additional money involved in this request.
I think it's a good idea, Frank. I think because of the high dollar amount Jay got back from the estimates on the improvements at Per Parsons, I think we got to wait a little while to let the prices come back down. So moving this around and getting the water right at these lakes, moving along since that's the most important part of the project, I think it's a good idea. Are there any questions or just from anybody on the committee or the commission? Commissioner Butt.
It's my understanding that of the 2.5 million that we're using 500,000, so that leaves 2,000, and you're requesting 1.1 million to go to these other projects. Is that the way I understand that?
That's right. That would leave about, it's all estimates here, but it would leave about 900,000 remaining in the Her Parsons. Should other things come up that we get an opportunity, we don't anticipate that, but it could happen. It also gives us a little wiggle room on some of those contracts that we make for the fishing piers and courtesy docks. And that money, if it's not spent, will be carried forward into the next year. And that's typically how these larger projects work out.
Is a motion required for this request?
Yes.
So moved.
We're still discussing right now, but I'll take that as, and is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we're going to have some more discussion. Somebody, you got a question? Go ahead.
Yeah. Frank, I know this 2.5 is just one part of the signature lake. Can you recap for us what the total budget is in FY23?
There's another two budgets that combined are roughly 900,000, and that's for primarily the under the water work, the buying of fish, the buying of habitats, feeders, things like that. There's also money in there should we need to contract services for aquatic vegetation, and I think a little bit of that lake the planning for the lake renovation at Woodhaven at Montgomery Bell. So that's why that money is there ready to use for the underwater work. We can dip into it as we think we can strategically for some of these courtesy docks and piers and things as well.
So those two numbers, what's the total commitment that we made in the very beginning to this Signature Lake series?
I'd have to review what we put that. That's been that has been increasing. We started at a number that I can't remember, and then we added the 2.5 for Her Parsons. So we've already been committed and increased our commitment to it. But I just don't know. Top of your head.
Any other question from anyone? Oh, we got a motion to second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Right. Mr. Charlton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be reporting on the month of October on the financial report. On your sheets or in your iPad, you should have the slides. At the first slide, the voting fund is about $47,000 less than what was projected thus far this fiscal year. The expense to total for the budget is about 23%. On the wildlife slide, we're within 175,000 of the projected amount of license income through October, and approximately 26% expense to the total budget. The next slide is the wetlands acquisition, and we have approximately $21,562,000 as a balance. The last slide exhibits the balances for the funds that are invested in the total reserve balances. I would point out that the SPIF rate, State Pool Investment Fund, is now almost 3% as of the month of October. Any questions or comments?
I actually think it's about 4% currently.
Well, this is all that, I would
You
imagine
quoted
November.
Right.
I would imagine November would be a little higher, but it's right around 3%, which is, I think it jumped from 2.45 the month before.
Are there any questions from committee, commission? Everything clear? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Madam Chairman, that's all for us.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. We're going to take about a 15-minute session break. So please be back at 2:25. Thank you.
White-tailed deer were a rare sight in Tennessee when the TWRA was founded in 1948. Today, we estimate our deer population at nearly 1.6 million, but face a growing and significant threat, chronic wasting disease. Currently, there is no cure for CWD, and the disease is 100% fatal for the animal, which threatens both the health of our wildlife populations and the opportunities available for hunters. Management of CWD is complex and requires numerous long-term techniques to be applied, monitored, and adjusted over time, which is why TWRA is implementing a new 5-year CWD response and management plan. The plan includes 5 main overarching goals. Number 1, prevent the introduction or spread of CWD to new areas. Number 2, surveillance and monitoring to improve early detection of the disease and better track the number and location of cases. Number 3, activate management and responses to minimize the impacts of CWD where the disease has been detected and proactively respond to any new cases. Number 4, more research to optimize all of TWRA's CWD programs. And finally, number 5, outreach and communications to ensure the public and our hunters have the information they need about CWD. This new CWD response and management plan will serve as a guiding document for TWRA staff and ensure the best science is applied to our efforts to control the disease. And we want to have a whole of government approach. That's why we created this plan with the help of the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation and the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, with additional input from a wide range of stakeholders over an 18-month process. Research on animal health diseases, including CWD, is constantly evolving, so the agency plans to remain flexible and adaptable in our response plans so white-tailed deer remain an important feature of Tennessee's landscape and culture. Our hunters have an important role in helping manage CWD, and we want to hear from you. The CWD Response and Management Plan will be available for public comment this winter, and the agency will host a public meeting for an in-person opportunity to discuss the plan with our biologists. Together, we can control the spread of CWD in Tennessee. For more information on CWD hunting regulations and incentives, visit cwdintennessee.com.
Banding bats for research.
Am I going out too? Yep, come with us.
We're here at Belney Cave Refuge in Montgomery County. And what we're going to do is we're going to catch the bats emerging from the cave using these harp traps here.
So the bats will actually fly in from one side and they'll actually attempt to avoid this first strand. Some can see it, some can echolocate these strands. And as they turn sideways, they'll try to attempt to fly to the other side. They'll hit these right here with their wings. They'll fall down.
Our typical methods we use to catch bats, like mist nets, it's not something we can use here because there's so many bats that exit this cave each night in summertime that we couldn't process the bats and get them out of the net quick enough, and that would do more harm than good. So we use the harp trap. We catch them safely. If we don't get them out in time, then they can actually roost inside the trap.
32.5.
And then we're going to weigh them.
It's going to be a non-reproductive female.
Assess the reproductive nature of the bats, look for wing damage from white-nose syndrome, and then put a band on them, which we can use to track the bats if they're ever recaptured in our life. We've been very fortunate here in Tennessee. We've got several projects where we work with threatened or endangered bats and get to chase them with our cars and contractor planes. And here we get to band them real quick. It's a lot of work in a short period of time, but it, you know, over the course of a couple years, the work pays off when we start seeing our bands popping up at various places across the range. Yep. We try to get as many people as possible. Since we're working with an endangered species, we can't hold them for very long. The longer you hold them, the more stress it puts on the animal. So we get as many people up here to get the animals captured out of the trap in a bag, processed, and let go in as short a period as possible. We've actually been banding here for several years to try to get as many bands out. A colony this size, we can't capture every bat to band them. So we use this one night each year to get as many bands out as we can and hopefully track them through time. Basically, with the band recovery, we're getting a straight line recovery from where it was banded at to where it was recovered at. And at this site, a lot of these bats here get recaptured, or we recapture bats that use the Fort Campbell area. But we've also recovered bats from as far away as Shawnee National Forest in Illinois. And these bats have been recovered as far south as Fern Cave in Alabama. So we get a movement pattern across a very large part of the range of the species.
Female, juvenile, non-reproductive, 0.
There's both a maternity colony and a bachelor, so they segregate in the cave. The females will use a different section of the cave from the males, so we'll get a sex ratio of the actual colony. How many of them the females have given birth this late in the year? They should have already given birth, so we'll be able to assess if they were pregnant or if they're lactating. Then we'll be able to see if there's any impacts potentially from white-nose syndrome, since it is in this cave in the wintertime. Here at this site, we're hoping that we continue to see the positive results or positive things we've been seeing with gray bats. Gray bats have not had the declining numbers as with other species of cave bats in Tennessee. So by doing this, we can assess the wing damage, which tells us possibly if they're getting a pretty bad or significant infection in the wintertime from the fungus. So if we do this work, it gives us that snapshot. So we're hoping that we continue to see the good things we've seen here at Belney Cave. There's a lot of research going on with a lot of fungal communities that exist on different animal skins, particularly bats, because some species don't seem to be susceptible to white-nose syndrome, and there's a possibility that it could be because of those bacteria and fungi that grow on the bat skin, and one of those species is gray bats, and hopefully we'll be able to fund some of that research in the future to see if possibly the fungi and bacteria grow on our bats is different than other bats, and possibly lead to some form of control, or explain, at least at the very least, explain why the gray bats here aren't succumbing to white-nose syndrome.
Next up, we go to the Buffalo River cleanup.
The event today is actually a partnership. It's a pretty unique experience between our agency and also Buffalo River Resort. They approached us a month or so ago wanting to promote boating safety, but then also to do something to protect our river.
Well, we thought it would be important as the season kicks off on the Buffalo River to really make sure that the river was cleaned up from the winter and the floods that happened in this area, and just pick up random trash and it gets deposited on the riverbank. And so before all of our customers and honestly other people's customers are on the river, we thought it'd be a good thing to partner with the TWRA to do.
Well, I've got 37 and a half miles of Buffalo River here in Perry County. I'm a little bit partial to it. We've got two main rivers, and that's the Tennessee River, which is more commonly called Kentucky Lake, and then the Buffalo River. And we've actually got slightly more Buffalo River than I do Tennessee River, but I'm very partial to this river. It's pristine, it's clear water. It's got a lot of smallmouth in it. It's got just infinite opportunities for people to canoe, kayak, paddleboard, swim. It's just, in my opinion, one of the few rivers that we have in western Middle Tennessee that's still got this clear, rustic, old Middle Tennessee feel to it.
The watersheds are so crucial with the urban sprawl in Tennessee especially, but to help preserve and enhance and to bring the younger generation, get them outside, get them away from these computers, away from these phones, let them experience nature. Who knows, there's river otter all throughout the place, muskrats, all kinds of snakes and fish, and even pull over a shoal, pick up a little trash and let the kids throw rocks in the water and find crawfish. It's an awesome opportunity. I'm so glad not only for Buffalo River Resort to give us this opportunity, but also for the public to seize it and take advantage of it.
Rivers, ponds, creeks, streams, you name it. Most folks that litter, whatever they littered with, it actually weighed more when they brought it in than it did when they left it. So if you take it with you, you need to be able to bring it back out. And it's vitally important.
I've just noticed in my lifetime, areas that I'm now taking my son to, there's not necessarily the focus on maintaining the cleanliness and the look of the different areas for generations to come.
And that's one of the top complaints that I get is it's not so much the canoers coming up and down the river, but it's the trash that they leave behind.
I think we can get this one more anyway.
When people litter, it really cuts off public access to places. Private landowners that would be prone to let some folks maybe put in a canoe or bank fish, when places start getting trashed up, that's the first thing that gets cut off is public access.
Last year was our record year. So if we had a record year, odds are, unfortunately, there's a record year of trash that was left unintentionally most of the time on the river.
It does get a lot of use, and it's grown in popularity, I believe, in the last few years with the number of canoe and kayak outfitters located up and down the river in Humphreys County, Perry County, Wayne County. And it's just that much more reason for our agency to do these education events, get the word out about the positive things that come from the Buffalo River, but also to help folks be more cognizant of keeping their trash picked up, taking their litter with them. It's a small river, but it's a pristine river, and it can be trashed up very easily. It's a small river, but it's a very, very utilized river. And in order to stay pristine, people have to really, really be mindful of keeping their litter picked up.
Next up is a story about the striper brood collection.
We're out today on the Cumberland River. Every year the TWRA goes out and they get brood fish so that the hatchery can produce more fish. And today we're going to take a couple boats. We're going to run up toward Cordell Hull Dam, and we're going to watch the crew, see how this is done and what they get. What are those?
So these are the arrays for the electrofishing electrodes. Essentially, this is the hot wire, and the boat serves as the ground, and it pushes electricity through the water.
What's a brood fish? That's the fish that's going to spawn and have a bunch of babies that the hatchery can raise and release back into the river.
This is striper broodstock fishing, and what are we doing?
Yeah, striper brood collection. Yeah, so we're at the just below Cordell Hole Dam, probably the uppermost part of Old Hickory Lake, I guess, on the Cumberland River. Caney Fork's not far away, and it's usually a good striper run this time of year.
Striper don't reproduce naturally? Is that the case?
They'll attempt to do that, and there's some cases in which they do, but these eggs have to be suspended for 48 hours, and so the river reaches aren't long enough for those eggs to stay suspended in that water. The water has to be moving, so that's pretty much what limits reproduction. So not far downstream, you get some calmer waters, and the eggs will settle to the bottom and suffocate.
That was gizzard shad, wasn't it? That was gizzard shad.
There's a lot of gizzard shad. Perfect size, too.
We came through a bunch of gizzard shad. That's the best food for going out and trying to catch these fish. And just like clockwork, they chalked up a nice stripe. Woo! Look at that.
Yeah, who picked this spot? We need more fish. You want to hold the paddlefish, Ashley? He's ready to go. Now, they need to be generating a little bit or releasing some water. I think the water's still falling. Looks like it's still falling. So these fish are probably holed up somewhere. They've all bunched up.
It looks absolutely horrible, but those fish aren't hurt. They're just stunned.
It's not making them feel great right now, but you can see way back there, they've already gone back down.
What I'm coming to understand is that even though we have electricity in the water and we're shocking these fish up, it's still fishing.
Right here, right here, right here, right here, right here.
There's two down there. A really good striper fishery below Cordell Hole Dam. The state record was caught from the upper end of Old Hickory, which is essentially where we're at. Well, what we do every year around this time, we'll collect brood fish, brood striped bass, so that we can take them back to the hatchery and spawn them and produce millions of eggs and hopefully millions of fry, which we will redistribute to the different hatcheries across the state, and then they'll grow them out and then stock them back into our state waters.
Woo, yeah! We've seen everything today. I think we even saw a sturgeon further upriver, paddlefish, striped bass, white bass, all kinds of shad.
Overall, it was a really interesting day to come out and see all those different types of fish. And we were successful. We got several good female stripers, and we could use a few more males, but I think we've got a good start.
White-tailed deer were a rare sight in Tennessee when the TWRA was founded in 1948. Today, we estimate our deer population at nearly 1.6 million. But they face a growing and significant threat, chronic wasting disease. Currently, there is no cure for CWD, and the disease is 100% fatal for the animal, which threatens both the health of our wildlife populations and the opportunities available for hunters. Management of CWD is complex and requires numerous long-term techniques to be applied, monitored, and adjusted over time, which is why TWRA is implementing a new 5-year CWD response and management plan. The plan includes 5 main overarching goals. Number 1, prevent the introduction or spread of CWD to new areas. Number 2, surveillance and monitoring to improve early detection of the disease and better track the number and location of cases. Number 3, activate management and responses to minimize the impacts of CWD where the disease has been detected and proactively respond to any new cases. Number 4, more research to optimize all of TWRA's CWD programs. And finally, number 5, outreach and communications to ensure the public and our hunters have the information they need about CWD. This new CWD response and management plan will serve as a guiding document for TWRA staff and ensure the best science is applied to our efforts to control the disease. And we want to have a whole of government approach. That's why we created this plan with the help of the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation and the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, with additional input from a wide range of stakeholders over an 18-month process. Research on animal health diseases, including CWD, is constantly evolving, so the agency plans to remain flexible and adaptable in our response plans so white-tailed deer remain an important feature of Tennessee's landscape and culture. Our hunters have an important role in helping manage CWD, and we want to hear from you. The CWD Response and Management Plan will be available for public comment this winter, and the agency will host a public meeting for an in-person opportunity to discuss the plan with our biologists. Together, we can control the spread of CWD in Tennessee. For more information on CWD hunting regulations and incentives, visit cwdintennessee.com.
Here's a story that'll touch your heart. An eagle rescue and release.
And just like that, a bald eagle rescued from the Duck River a week ago is returned to the wild. It's a happy ending that took a community effort.
Well, me and my in-laws and my friend Brandon, we were out kayaking, and my mother-in-law saw the eagle, and we seen it. He was in the mud a little bit, so we picked him up, carried him to the shore best we could, and towel over him, got him warmed up as best as we could. Wildlife came.
I've had these calls before, and this is the first time it was actually a bald eagle. Usually it turns out to be a hawk or a lesser raptor. No, I didn't expect it to be a real bald eagle. When I got here, it was drawn up. The talons were drawn up, and it wasn't using its talons. It was calm, docile, shaking. It wouldn't have made calm, docile, shaking. It wouldn't have made it through the night if they wouldn't have found it. I took it to Dr. Stimpson's house. He looked at it in his driveway and said, "Yeah, it looks pretty good. It's no broke bones, no blood coming out of it."
The biggest thing he wanted me to do was just evaluate and see if it was too far gone, and I told him I didn't think so. The legs felt fine, the wings felt fine, his eyes looked good. He just looked like he was weak and cold.
I mean, he was not trying to fight us. He didn't try to bite me. He was alert, but he was having a little trouble breathing. He was breathing harder. He was found in the river, so he was wet when Larry took him out of the river. And, he was very stressed, of course, and he didn't even want to stand up on his feet. He was down on his hocks, and he had his talons clenched, and he wouldn't really try to grab. That's not normal behavior for a bird. If you had one, they would be trying to actually bite you and trying to fight you. But he was pretty weak. And so I didn't know what we'd find on Sunday. I didn't know if he would actually make it overnight, but thankfully he did.
I think personal opinion, it would have died that night if Dr. Anderson wouldn't come in and hydrated it and got it going. And then we took it up to Walden's Puddle the next morning, and they took care of it the rest of the week and got it into flying.
We were actually very lucky with this bird. This bird was found to have shot in his x-rays, but we do believe that those are old injuries. So he's been shot at some point in his life, and he's recovered, luckily, very tiny shot, and in a very non-critical place in his wing, so it didn't affect his flight. What happened this time, we're not sure about, but he came to us very exhausted, slightly thin. It looked like he'd just been completely tired out. So for us, that's a little bit of an easier fix. We support them with fluids and we support them with food and basic general supportive care. And he came back really, really nicely and uneventfully, which was nice.
There's a lot more eagles than there used to be, and that's really good. And you see them much more frequently if you look around and if you're in the right places. But it's still nice to see them.
I'm just very happy to be here to see it. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime.
But I have to say, anytime we can put an animal back, it's always special. An eagle is a great one because he's a symbol, and he's a symbol of our country.
No, it was great. It was great to see it flying as strong as it was flying too.
I'm glad that we get to see him, get him back flying up in the air. You know, it's great to see that he made it. I'm hoping one day, he'll just fly down and nod his head or something, Be pretty cool.
Next up, youth dove hunt.
Well, we're here in College Grove, Tennessee. It's only 300 acres, but we usually have a great hunt. Typically, we plant and manipulate the wheat that's here. Work goes in to this field starting in late July and all the way through the end of August to try to get and hold birds here. This year was wet, plus the hurricane that came through. Doves have small legs and they need bare ground. And one of the biggest things is to keep bare ground to keep the doves here. And you constantly got a disc, but you only can plant the wheat one time, so that's a challenge. So we try to manipulate the ground to try to give the hunters the best opportunity to harvest birds. Today we had close to 25 youths with their parents, and we had a good hunt, over 50 birds killed, and they shot between 6 o'clock and all the way up to 9 o'clock. So they burned a lot of powder today.
We got some gun cases, some dove decoys, some mojos. This is actually a dove tree. Okay?
Yeah, the local officer here, Cody, he got with some local merchants and had a lot of door prizes, and all the youth here, they got at least one prize, and they ate hot dogs and got t-shirts, so it was a great time.
Mapping the Caney.
Caney Fork originates quite a bit east and south of here, and it, of course, is dammed at Rock Island and then is again dammed here at Center. It originally was a smallmouth fishery, but of course when they came in and did the dam with the water coming into the Caney Fork coming from below the thermocline, it therefore is a cold water fishery now. And so it has become a trout fishery rather than a smallmouth fishery.
Well, this is the water quality sensor. Goes off the back of the boat.
Well, I was made aware of the HDSS survey, the high definition stream survey techniques, a couple years ago in a fisheries meeting. And since then, I've talked to the gentleman that came up with that process and that survey technique several times, and we've tried to work it into TWRA's sampling scheme and how we would use that on rivers and streams.
This is for the underwater video camera. So ultimately, this will have side scan sonar, GPS, multiple video cameras, water quality, and all of that's linked together, and everything will be logged in this box in the back of the kayak. So when you actually see us working today, it looks just like we're kayaking like everybody else here on there. We turn on the equipment, it logs every second, and we're able to map both banks, the bottom, the water quality, the height of the water, the depth.
This is essentially the equivalent of aerial photography for the terrestrial side of wildlife management. We've never had something like that for rivers and streams.
The whole point of this is we're going to be covering, I'm pretty sure it's 28 miles of Caney Fork. We're going to cover this in days. Every meter, we're getting information every second from video, from side scan sonar, from water quality, from depth, 4 different GPS units, 4 different video cameras.
So this kind of opens up a lot of the things we can do in rivers and streams. In the past, all we've had is a topo map or an aerial image that shows the surface of the water.
It doesn't show anything underneath the water. It's essentially the street maps. A lot of people use Google Maps for navigation and a lot of things. It's street maps for rivers and streams. This technique allows us to get what's underneath the water, what's in the water, as far as water quality, dissolved oxygen, pH. All this can be collected real time and then tied to a GPS point. So we can essentially collect thousands of points down the river and be able to look at those and compare them because the time period is very similar.
The basic idea behind mapping the river and Trout Unlimited, the Cumberland chapter,
Welcome back. I want to first say, I didn't say earlier, I want to thank everyone who's coming to speak. Everybody's going to have the opportunity. And we thank y'all to come take time out of your day and away from work and away from your families to come speak. So everybody will have an opportunity. And I believe Director Maxidon? No.
Executive Director of Tennessee Wildlife Resources Foundation is here.
Oh.
If you'd like to come up and answer the questions that were asked earlier, he's happy.
That'd be great.
Good afternoon. I apologize I'm late. Was probably there tomorrow, but got caught up in traffic. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have about Montgomery County.
Thank you for being here. We had questions earlier.
I'll
Commissioner
start.
Cox?
I'll
Yes.
start. Where's Joey? There you go. Joey, what are you going to do different this time since you closed it down? You're going to get this money and reopen it. How does your business model or business plan change to make sure that we give you this money to fix it up, it's going to be viable?
So a couple things there. One is there's a basic life expectancy of any range, and Montgomery County Shooting Complex was getting to the end of that. The complex has been there for more than 15 years. The berms were eroded and shot into. The main thing we're going to do is we're getting it back up. This proposal gets it back up to safety specifications, gets our minimum backstop heights to 20 feet as recommended by NRA. As far as business model, it's going to be different management out there and increasing our prices, because where we're at, where that range is in Southside, is close to Clarksville, but we're not in town. We'll have, on an annual basis, maybe 10,000 visitors to that range. So I believe the range can be financially viable. We just need to look at our pricing structure and make some changes there.
Well, I think the federal government has a 20-year life expectancy on what you're doing. So hopefully it'll last 15 or 20 years. So
I think it will.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ballou?
What's the big revenue producer out there out of all the shooting sports that we push out there? What brings in the money?
So took a deep dive into that when we started having problems last year, and basically it's a third, and a third. There are three revenue drivers out there. You take pistol, rifle as one. About 30% of the revenue comes from pistol and rifle side. About 30% of the revenue comes from the shotgun side of things, sporting clays, trap, skeet, 5-stand. And then roughly 33% comes from retail sales. So it's kind of a three-legged stool.
Well, it sounds like you've got a base there. I mean, Montgomery County is growing and getting bigger every day. And it sounds like you've got the usage. We just got to get the right management, the right equipment, and update it. And it got everything there to be a successful range. Sounds like.
That's correct.
Okay, Chip.
So you say you're bringing a new management team in?
Yes.
Do they have a history of running gun ranges, or is this just somebody we didn't like Jim Bob and we're bringing in Ed?
No. We're still searching for a permanent. We've got an interim range manager right now while it's open for the half term, but it would be somebody with experience running ranges.
And the interim range manager now, what's his experience?
He's extensive experience on the shotgun side of things, sporting clays and trap. Been a competitive shooter for 40 years.
Has he run a range before?
No, I don't. Well, yes, he has actually. He has some experience at Fort Campbell.
Was it a successful range, or was
Yes.
it the range at Fort Campbell, the military part of the military?
Well, it was a military range, but it's open to the public there as well.
Okay. So I think as we talk through this again, I always ask the same question: what's the total budget? What do y'all spend every year?
At the range?
Yeah.
Last year was 667,000 in gross revenue out there.
And how much did it cost to run it?
Basically break even.
So you're break
proposition.
even.
That's right.
And you think this influx will add 10, 20% to your total revenue?
Yes.
And is there a business plan for that or marketing plan, or is it, we feel like that's what it's going to do?
It's still in development. We don't have a complete business plan for that.
Okay. Again, I would say before we spend any money, I'd like to see an actual business plan that actually shows some projected revenue.
Any further questions from the commission?
Joey, just for the record, you might explain the ownership arrangement and how this works with the foundation.
So the range came about beginning in 2005. TWRA came to us and asked us to help with fundraising efforts to start a range there in Montgomery County. There was certainly a need there in the community and enough support from the local government. So we raised the money to buy 140 acres there in Southside under the foundation's umbrella, and TWRA TWRF owns the property and has run the range basically as a state public range since that time. And prior to, I guess, last spring when I spoke to the commission, the understanding was that we're trying to run that range at a break-even proposition, and it was, even though we weren't quite there, but it was cheaper than most of the other state ranges that were in operation. But the commission pointed out to me they're looking for a proposal that gets this place up and on its feet so that it's self-sufficient. And that's what I put together for y'all to review.
Okay. Do we have a plan? I think like the map or like the design of what's coming?
Yes, I put together, there was I believe a 70-page proposal that was submitted to TWRA. So I assume that the R3 committee got that.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I will call on Chairman Hank Wright with Fisheries.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Make sure this is on. Today, Fisheries Committee members, we're going to, this afternoon here, propose proclamation amendments and also a new proclamation for Fisheries Chief, Mr. Mark Thurman. Mr. Thurman, just a reminder, this is a committee item that may or may not advance to the full commission tomorrow. And I want to invite during this process legal counsel to give us guidance and interject when necessary, keep us in our lane. And I'll recognize Chairman Mark Thurman, or Fisheries Chief Mark Thurman, for Proclamation 22-10, sport fishing.
Turn on your mic, please, sir.
How about that? All right. The first item is in section 1, general season, statewide creel possession, length limits, non-game fish species. This is really a housekeeping item. We are proposing to remove pallet and lake sturgeon from the sport fish proclamation. These species are covered under a different rule. And so this is just simply a housekeeping item. Our next few slides, I think the next 3, deal with the Bill Dance signature lakes and proposals associated with those. We have regulations proposed for the small lakes designated as Bill Dance signature lakes. In general, these lakes will be managed for largemouth, bluegill, red ear sunfish, and catfish. That'll be the focus at these places. In addition to the on-the-ground work management that you saw like at Fall Creek Falls back in September, our crews have been out conducting surveys on all of these sites. The proposals that we're voting on today are proposals that were based on those surveys. We have a variety of approaches with largemouth bass. You'll see several different strategies: protected length ranges, minimum length limits, some without length limits. All those are based on what that data told us about the resource and how we could go about managing it. With bluegill and red ear fisheries, mainly with creel limits, will be the main approach there, with some difference in the number of fish allowed daily. And we have a couple of length limits on catfish. All of these are designed at enhancing the quality at these sites. The first set are TWA lakes. Lakes are managed by the Wildlife Resources Agency. That's Lake Halford, Browns Creek, Herb Parsons. There are some, let me see if this goes. At Lake Halford, you're going to see some additional items, and that's related to the fact that it's a new lake. So there are things related to operations there that would fall under proclamation. I'm going to mainly focus on the largemouth bass. I'm going to mainly focus on the largemouth bass strategies, because that's where the diversity and the approaches comes in. At Lake Halford, we're proposing a 5-fish, 18-inch maximum with 2 fish over. At Browns Creek, a 10 fish per day, 18 to 25-inch protected length range, 1 fish over. And at Herb Parsons, 10 per day, 16 to 20-inch protected length range with 1 over. And a variety of approaches with the bluegill numbers, but either 10 or 20 on those. The next group of lakes are TDEC lakes, Department of Environment and Conservation, state park lakes. You've heard Deputy Director Fiss talk about some of the renovation work going on at Woodhaven, and that's part of all this. At Woodhaven, we'll have a 10 fish per day on the bass. Again, I'm going to focus on the bass. 18 to 25-inch protected length range with 1 fish over. At Travis McNatt, no creel, but only 1 fish over 16. And at Pin Oak, 10 fish per day, 18 to 25-inch protected length range with 1 fish over. Acorn will have 10 fish per day with no minimum length limit. Let me go back. And at Fall Creek Falls, we'll have a 10 fish per day, 16-inch maximum. So that's a lot of different strategies, but again, it's kind of where the data led us. And we're going to see how all these different strategies work and keep monitoring these sites and see how we progress over time. The next item is in section 1, creel seasons and statewide creel possession and length limits, game fish species, and applies to Douglas Reservoir. At Douglas Reservoir, we currently have a 5 fish per day in combination on bass, largemouth, smallmouth, 5 fish per day in combination. Only 1 may be a smallmouth, June through October 15th. And then we have a split season on the length requirement that June 1st through October 15th, 1 fish per day, 18-inch minimum length limit, and October 16th through May 31st, 5 fish per day with a 15-inch minimum. Largemouth and spotted currently do not have a minimum length limit. So our proposal, which is geared at reducing summertime mortality, handling mortality in the summer, is to go with a with largemouth and smallmouth bass, June 1 through September 30th. Those warmer months, 5 per day, only 1 over 16. October 1st through May 31st, 5 per day in combination, including spotted bass with no length limit. Now in September, we presented this with a 12-inch minimum during that cooler season. We met afterwards with, I met with the Region 4 Fisheries folks, Bart Carter, Program Manager, John Hammonds, the lead Reservoir Fisheries Manager, and we looked at what we were presenting and arrived at a consensus. They consulted with their staff as well, move away from the 12-inch minimum length limit in that cooler season. And that's what we're presenting today is without that. And it's a pretty straightforward regulation that we got it. It'll be really interesting to see how over time it works. And we should be able to see some results in a fairly short period of time. It'd be nice to have it for 3 to 5 years and see where we go with it. Our next item is related to trot lines. In our September meeting, the slide looked a little different. And what I decided to do on this one was to make sure that we had what our existing rules related to trot lines were. The ones that are not in bold are existing regulations, and the 2 bold ones are ones that were proposed in September to be added. What we already have in place is the tagging requirement, and also marking and tagging for floating lines. The also is in there that identifies who can remove lines that are in violation. And then, of course, we added the 24-hour check period as a proposal, and the requirement that they couldn't be more than 3/4 of the way across any stream, river, chute, or embayment. Those 2, the 24-hour check period and the restriction on the length that they could extend across a body of water, or those features in a body of water, were proposed. Section 15, special definitions for reservoir boundaries. This is more of a housekeeping one as well. We're setting out to identify the boundaries of reservoirs. The example here is Kentucky Lake below Pickwick Dam. And in the language in the proclamation, we'll read that Kentucky Lake includes the Tennessee River from the Tennessee-Kentucky state line upstream to Pickwick Dam. This will be done for all of our reservoirs, both in the Cumberland and Tennessee basins. And also in Section 15, under those special definitions, we fleshed out a little more on the definition of tributaries. So we went from reservoir full pool is the reservoir stream boundary for harvest restrictions unless otherwise noted, to reservoir full pool elevation is the boundary between reservoir and tributary streams on rivers unless otherwise noted. Again, it's a housekeeping thing and it helps clarify where regulations apply on a body of water. And that concludes the presentation on Proclamation 2210.
Thank you, Chief Thurman. If you don't mind remaining at the podium for a moment, just want to thank you for your hard work. This is a bulky proclamation with a lot of information in it. And so thank you to your staff, to the agency for all the work that goes into, and the thought and the data that goes into this. Just as a matter of housekeeping for the Fisheries Committee members, if you could withhold any motions or actions until we've had a chance to get clarification from the Fisheries Committee members to Chief Thurman, but also until after the public comment period, which will come next. So at this time, are there any Fisheries Committee members that have questions for Chief Thurman for clarifications? Those on the Fisheries Committee for now. Commissioner Cox?
Mark, when you set the bass limits, and I hope this is rhetorical, but when you set the bass limits of these lakes, Troy Goldsby works with Bill Dance group that y'all did this together, correct?
Troy's
analyzed everything.
Yes, and
he was involved.
He's been involved in the process.
Yeah, I thought so. You said on trot lines, we had floating trot lines. I don't recall in our discussions previously, my understanding was all the trot lines were except right next to the bank were 3 feet under the water. So
If you look in the,
maybe I need more explanation on that.
well, I think the way we talked about it in September, we were focusing on it in a different way. We also had talked, more about commercial regulations and lining up with commercial regulations. But one thing I didn't point out in that slide was we have in the proclamation definition of a trot line includes single hook restrictions, which is an important safety measure. It's more open on commercial gear. And then in the proclamation, it addresses the use of floating lines. We didn't talk a lot about it, but they have to markers and they have to be tagged. I've not seen any floating lines used. And a lot of these regulations have been in place for a very long time. So
aren't floating lines usually used in lakes, not in rivers?
Oh, I would say so.
And the definition of reservoir and tributary at pool elevation, explain that to me a little bit more. I mean, I've read it, but the boundary between reservoir and tributary streams, unless otherwise noted, what does that mean? How did you know?
Full pool elevation is something that you can reference with TVA Lake Info.
Mm-hmm.
It's a known elevation that the reservoir extends into a tributary. So it's a reference point that is known and marked and mapped.
All right. Well, there was some time ago, and you may not know the answer to this, but there was a court case that I think some legislators got involved in that asked us to have a better definition between a reservoir and a tributary, because we wrote a ticket or there was a court case or something on it. So has that been done, or does this have something to do with that?
It does. And I think the first item where we defined from the Tennessee-Kentucky state line upstream to Pickwick Dam addresses the issue you're talking about and defines that, well, I'm at Pickwick Dam, I'm fishing below Pickwick Dam, or I'm fishing on the Tennessee River, you're in Kentucky Lake. And that defines that and sets those regulations for that place.
So that's been clarified.
This should clarify
Okay,
that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or clarification requests for Chief Thurman on the proclamation from the committee members? Commissioner Blue?
Hey, just a quick question. On the floating trot line, explain it to me. Is there a minimum amount of hooks or length and a float? I mean, I've never seen a floating trot line on Kentucky Lake.
I've not witnessed a floating trot line out in the field. It's just simply in proclamation. So if it was used at some point or has been used.
But it's legal to have a floating trot line.
It's in proclamation.
Okay. And it doesn't say a minimum amount of hooks or a certain distance.
The number
or
of
amount
hooks
floats on a hook.
the number of hooks on a trot line is identified in statute.
If it's over
So
100,
it
you're
can't be more than
commercial.
100.
Right. Unless
In
you're
statute,
commercial. Can't you have over 100 if you're commercial?
I'm not sure about that, but I know in sport fishing, for sport fishing trot lines, it's limited to 100, but that's not in proclamation. It's in statute.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other Fisheries Committee member questions for Chief Thurman? All right, if not, are there any questions from other commissioners for Chief Thurman? Any commissioners have any questions for clarification? All right, if not, the next step in this process is to move to the public comment part. And there are just a couple of things I'd like to say about that. First, we're very thankful for those in the public that have taken the time out of their schedules and lives and away from the family to come talk to us. There are many ways to contact us through phone or email. and people have done that, but we're grateful for all the comment and input, but we're especially grateful for those willing to come talk to us in person. We care about the same stuff. So we're glad you're here. I'd like to open up the floor for public comment. All parties should identify themselves. Please state your name and where you're from. We're going to limit input to 3 minutes each, so be concise and be aware of that. At the end of each stakeholders' input, each committee member will have a chance to ask you questions, so be aware of that. They may want clarification on your statements or your questions or your opinions. And then I reserve the right to not only limit to 3 minutes, but also limit your comments if there's repetition. So if you have exactly the same thing to say as the person before you, you'll be limited if that's okay for sake of time. With that, we can start that process.
I'm an assistant district attorney with the 28th Judicial District of Tennessee. I'm also the president of the West Tennessee Canoe and Kayak Club. I'm an ACA certified kayaking and kayak angling instructor, and I was also a founding member of the Gibson County Hunters Sharing the Harvest. I've been holding a Tennessee hunting and fishing license for at least 25 years. But I'm coming to you today to talk to you about the proclamation regarding sport fishing trot lines. Simply put, the existing regulation that we have is not sufficient to protect the safety of people who are using our waterways, swimmers, boaters, etc. And I'm coming to you with a proposal to amend that regulation. And you're getting a packet that's being passed down now. In that packet, you're going to find a digest that I did. Essentially what I did as an attorney, I went and surveyed the laws and regulations of the surrounding states that border Tennessee and in the Southeast, and looked at what they're doing and what has proven effective for safety measures with regard to their trot lines and how we could improve Tennessee's. I'm coming to you today with 4 specific proposals, and they're found on the memorandum that's the first page of your packet. Number 1, to require floating markers on all trot lines at either end and at every interval of 25 hooks. This will increase visibility so that people can see where a trot line is set and avoid it to prevent getting hung up in it and injured or even killed, which has happened in Tennessee. Number 2, the trot lines be set parallel to the nearest shore as opposed to across the current of moving water. This will present a much smaller profile to boaters and swimmers who are coming downstream in a river and should mitigate a great deal of contact between people and the trot lines that are set. Number 3, we're asking for a requirement that trot lines be submerged a minimum of 3 feet below the surface. That's not included in the current regulation. And number 4, we're asking for an explicit statement that says that trot lines may not be set, placed, or used so as to constitute a hazard to boating or public safety. That's somewhat implied in the laws that we have now and the regulations we have now, but we're asking for an explicit statement to that effect. I have taken the liberty of taking the regulation that we have this year and inserting the language that I'm asking you to adopt. I've also given you in your packets a copy of the current regulation so that you can compare the two. Last fall, I spoke with District Attorney Kenneth Baldwin up in Unicoi County, which was the county where we had an encounter on the Nolichucky River between a boater and a trot line, and there was some litigation that came out of that. General Baldwin, among other things, wrote a letter, and he supported the changes that we're asking you to make today. I've included a copy of that letter in your packet as well. But one of the things General Baldwin said to me was that he needed greater clarity in order to be able to enforce the law on these subjects so that we could know what was and wasn't safe and what wasn't required in Tennessee. Everything that I'm proposing today is taken from existing practices in bordering states around us that have similar systems to the ones that we have, water systems, ecosystems, and societal systems. So I'm not asking you to do anything too terribly outlandish. Look, I'm a fisherman myself. I'm not looking to make life hard on fishermen. The only cost to fishermen that I'm proposing that's in addition to what they would already have to do would be the cost of the floating markers. Given the fact that we've lost lives in Tennessee due to trot lines, and there have been some very near misses in the recent past, that's not a very high cost. I'm asking you to consider these changes for the purpose of safety because we have an unprecedented number of new people on the waterways in Tennessee, and essentially they're not familiar with what we have now. You cannot see an unmarked trot line until you're right up on it. Thank you.
Any questions from committee members?
Yeah, I've got a question. You want something, you talk about clarity. Who's going to decide if a trot line is set that constitutes a hazard? Who's going to make that judgment?
That would have to be a judgment that would be made by the agent, I suppose, that was involved.
So that's not perfectly clear, would you say?
Generally, in situations like this, you're going to have to leave that to a case-by-case basis.
You said that we have lost lives. Our data, the report we had was there was one person that drowned, which is bad, but there was no determination by the coroner that it was due to a trot line. So where do you get your data that says we've lost several lives from trot lines?
Commissioner Cox, Brandon Archer's mother is here today. I'd defer to her and let her talk to you about that if you may.
Well, you said several. I mean, I have great sympathy for anybody who loses their life, but I'm unaware of multiples. So I thought maybe you said it. You might know the details on the others.
If I said lives in plural, I apologize.
Okay, well,
I know we have lost a life that was
Right.
connected. He was
Right.
found tangled up in a trot line. Was
Okay.
the report that we read.
Okay, that was different than what I thought the coroner's report said. So I'm just trying to clarify that to make sure we got the correct information.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for coming forward. Yep. Oh, wait.
How many incidents in total in Tennessee with the trout line?
I don't have a number specifically. Are you talking about in a particular time frame?
Well, yeah, like last year, I mean, how many thousands of kayaks, paddle boaters, swimmers every day? Are we talking about one terrible incident, which I agree with Commissioner Cox, that's horrible. I haven't seen the report, but that's horrible. But are we talking about 100? We're talking about 10,000? I mean,
As far as swimmers and boaters encountering trot lines, I can tell you that there are quite a few that go unreported. People find abandoned trot lines and things of that nature and have to deal with them. We know of a few tragic incidents, the one involving Brandon Archer being one, the one on the Nolechucky River that was a very near miss being another. There have been others reported on the Hiwassee and other rivers, but as far as that made the media and things of that nature, those are the ones we know of.
do we have the people that we have reports on? Do we have that data? Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Saltzman, are you asking for the agency personnel or law enforcement to give
Well,
us that, or the appropriate time in the future?
When we hear incidents and quite a few and a lot and many, I'm just asking how many is many and quite a few and a lot.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Is Colonel Ryder here?
He was.
Could you kind of explain what we're looking at as far as data on incidents so we know we're making best decisions?
Yes, ma'am. So for our agency to be involved in the investigative piece of an incident, it has to be boating related. So what our data shows, our reporting system since 2011, when we broke out the type of vessel craft to canoes and kayaks, our agency has investigated 69 incidents involving canoes and kayaks. And none of these incidents have been trot line related. And I'll stop right there.
What are they related to?
Falls overboard, entanglements, strainers, all various other items structures and whatnot, but no indication of any trot line results of fatalities on canoes and kayaks.
Yeah, Daniel, does that make sense? 69 over 10 years?
Total incidents of fatalities.
Not fatalities. We've got one fatality.
Right.
That wasn't, I haven't seen the report, but when I asked how many a lot, is that about right? 69 or 70 over the last 10 years?
I couldn't speak to that, to be honest.
Okay, you've done so much work, which I appreciate, by the way, but just want to see if that kind of g-haws with what you know.
There are some of my colleagues here today who can speak to specific incidents, and I'll defer to them to speak about specifics.
Okay.
Commissioner Woods?
Anything else?
I'm going to say I'm going to be strongly opposed to parallel to the nearest shoreline. North Carolina, I see they do it and everything, but I mean, you try to stretch your trot line across the river to catch fish coming up and down the river. Those fish are not in a single file line up against that bank going upstream. I can't see us ever putting anything like that in place. Thank you.
Any further questions from committee members to Mr. Rogers? Commissioner Woods.
Darren, just clarification. You said 69 incidents, but I just don't want to get confused there with Commissioner Saltman. None of those were related to trot lines.
Correct.
Okay.
So
All right.
if we investigate an incident, it has to be boating related, and the fatal that's being mentioned was a swimming incident. Therefore, our agency does not make that investigation on a rule drowning.
All right. Just trying to understand that. Thank you.
And Colonel Ryder, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I just want to see you go back. I'm kidding. I have a question on the 69 incidents that we have investigated as an agency, law enforcement, on boating that were paddlecraft related. Were any of those fatalities? Were a few? I know there.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Yeah. So out of those
injuries, or
no, out of those were 43, 44 fatals off canoes and kayaks. But again, zero trot line.
Thank you.
Yeah, some of them are rule drowning, yes, sir.
Hey, Colonel. So, TWA is different than most law enforcement agencies because y'all don't deal with fibers. Y'all don't report those
We
things.
do for certain violations.
Right, for certain things.
Drugs, alcohol,
Right,
reckless
those
operation.
are TIBR.
We're related.
Right, and those are calculated and dispersed across the state every year, but TWRA is the only one that does anything with canoes or kayaks, I guess, as far as distribution of any type activity. So if somebody falls out of a canoe and gets tangled up in a trot line 20 yards downstream, you all would investigate that, right?
If it involved that kayak, that individual falling out of that canoe, yes, then it becomes our.
But if they're floating in a tube going down the river and get caught up in a triangle,
No, or they're swimming, or
that doesn't count.
It has to be a vessel has to be involved in a part of that incident.
So okay, got you.
If that makes sense.
I got you, yes, sir.
And then, of course, if they're ruled swimming, we're not the leading authority to make that.
Then the sheriff's office just does
Sure.
a complaint on it,
Sure,
or an investigation.
I'll stand right here.
that'd be smart. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Rogers? You bore the brunt of all the questions being the first speaker, so we appreciate you.
Could I respond to one thing?
Be fine.
You'd mentioned several, the 69 incidents and the fatalities, and I would point out that per the report that's put out by TWRA, the vast majority of those, something like 90+%, have a correlation with not wearing life jackets. That's something that I'm trying to address. One reason I'm an instructor, because we teach everyone wear their life jacket all the time. I don't care if the law requires it or not. That's not something I'm coming to this commission asking for, because one, we have a law on the subject, and two, that's something we're actively teaching. I'm coming to this commission because we don't have the authority to do anything about trot lines, and you do. And we see this as a hazard and a danger that we're encountering on the waterways, and we're asking for some help with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Andy Demetrio, and I live in Bartlett, Tennessee, and I am the owner of Blue City Kayaks, a TWRA licensed Memphis-based kayak tour outfitter. We focus on fun, instruction, and safety. I'm the only active American Canoe Association paddle sports instructor in Memphis, and I teach with anywhere within a 3-hour radius of the city. In 2021, I received the Memphis Fire Department Civilian Service Award and the Chickasaw Council of the Boy Scouts Distinguished Service Award for the life-saving rescue of 4 children and an adult on the Wolf River that occurred less than 1 mile from where we are today. I'm also on the board of directors for the Tennessee Scenic Rivers Association and a volunteer river guide for the Wolf River Conservancy. Kayaking is my greatest passion, and I cannot imagine my life without it. I agree with what these other folks from the ACA Tennessee are going to say. We have more people coming to the water than ever before. Nationally, there were 18 million paddlers in the United States in 2018, and that number increased to an estimated 35 million in 2022. Tennessee's amazing waterways make us a destination for an incredible residents and visitors. When ACA Tennessee partners with TWRA, we are a powerful organization together, and we do great things for the state of Tennessee. For example, ACA instructors from the TSRA have been volunteering to teach paddle sports at the TWRA's Becoming an Outdoor Woman event every year since the second year it was offered in the early 1990s. This year, TSRA also sent ACA instructors to the Tennessee Outdoors Youth Summit events. Just last week, ACA Tennessee and the Tennessee State Parks and TWRA got an award from the Tennessee Recreation and Parks Association for the most innovative program because of the 13 training events we offered statewide for National Safe Boating Week. You probably saw the press release that the state parks put out giving you guys a shout out. Part of the success of that program was when the ACA Tennessee launched a new kayak angler safety curriculum, Hooked on Safety, with TWRA at Buffalo Ridge Refuge at the end of National Boating Week. Many of the people in this room helped with one or more of those events. It is my hope that the TWRA will adopt a trot line proposal more in line with that of our neighboring states, like ACA Tennessee has proposed. Put them on flotation so people can see them, and the trot lines are out of the trees. Require them to be at least 3 feet underwater and require them to be set parallel to the bank so they create a smaller target for people traveling downstream. Among ACA Tennessee's and TWRA's shared values is the belief that outdoor sportsmen don't create lethal hazards for other outdoor sportsmen on purpose. Right now, the current TWRA regulation allows that to happen, and the proposed TWRA changes don't make things safer. In the TWA office in Nashville, it says the agency will foster the safe use of the state's waters through a program of law enforcement, public education, and access. That mission should tell us that we cannot support fishing regulations that literally allow sportsmen to put other recreationists in danger. We need to update our trot line regulations to be in line with the improvements made in our neighboring states. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Hopefully Daniel took them all.
Yeah, it looks like it did.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Hello. My name is Dr. Alan Solomon. I'm a Memphis resident. I want to start by saying I've been an outdoor recreational user of Tennessee woods and rivers all my life, and I want to thank y'all for what you do. I'm going to read a statement that's been prepared by Charlie Walbridge, who is the probably the leading safety authority on paddling sports in the United States. I'm going to skip through all of his introductory remarks, except to tell you that Charlie's been studying and writing about this since 1975. He posted a biannual safety report in the American Whitewater Journal, and he is like the #1 guy about river safety. And he says, whitewater paddlers learn very early on that a line set across a fast-moving current is extremely dangerous. For this reason, North Carolina and other neighboring states forbid setting trot lines across the current. Instead, they require that trot lines be clearly marked and set parallel to the current. A trot line was responsible for a fatality in Tennessee on September 2nd. You'll hear from his mother, Brandon Archer, a 21-year-old college football player who was canoeing with friends on the Tennessee Buffalo River when he was caught in an unmarked trot line. His body was recovered in 10 feet of water. The near miss and pattern of problematic trot lines on the Nolichucky River and indicate that if the trot line rules are not modified, there will be others, and we have somebody here to speak to that issue. The recent growth of paddling activity makes this an urgent matter. During the pandemic, thousands of new paddlers looked to Tennessee's wonderful rivers and streams. These were not whitewater paddlers, but people seeking a fun day on the water. Add thousands of kids in inner tubes and pool toys floating on a hot summer day, and you have a large number of people on the water. Any one of them could be caught in a river-wide trot line and become the next tragedy. These streams are legally navigable, and setting up a hazard to navigation, is wrong. I want to be plain that I do not, he does not, advocate a ban on trot lines, only sensible limitations on their placement, similar to those wisely set in other states. Paddlers respect fishermen and enjoy seeing them on the river. Many paddlers like to fish, and fishing kayaks are a fast-growing category of boats these days. And no fisherman would want to accidentally set a lethal trap for river runners. So please support rules to ensure that trot lines must be set safely, parallel to the current, and well marked so it is visible to other river users, so that everyone can enjoy their time on the water. Thank you. Anybody?
Any questions from committee members? Okay, thank you, Mr. Solomon. Next. Oh, sorry. Oh.
I don't have any kind of request. I've been involved with trot lines.
If you could state your name and where you're from, please.
Mike Kelly from Savannah.
Thank you, Mike.
45 years of commercial fishing and sport fishing. And I think we just got a little bit of confusion here when we're talking about a floated line. We're talking about a line that's got a float on it as an identification piece. It float on top of the water with a name and a license number. And I can't speak for sport fishermen, but commercial fishermen don't run trot lines across the top of the water because they cost a lot of money, and the boats would be tangled up in them. They'd be drugged 10 miles up the river. It'd be a big mess. I don't know of any commercial fisherman that runs trot lines on top of the water, maybe 3, 5, 6, 8 feet under the top. But I think that's where the confusion is about the floated line. There is rules that says you have to have a float on top of the water. Even if the trot line's running 60 foot deep, it identifies where it's at.
Thank you. And I'll let committee members just interrupt me. If there's a speaker that's finished and you have a question, please just go ahead and interrupt the process and ask them a question. I won't ask for questions every single time.
Thanks for having us. My name's Scott Fisher. I own the Nolichucky Outdoor Learning Institute. The other side of the state, you got to see the whole side of the state again, which is good, all the state. Don't get here enough. We do appreciate the opportunity. I was present the day that Robin Pope's son was caught in a trot line. They easily could have pulled him underwater and killed him. Brandon Archer's mother, who was here today, right there, she lost her son due to a trot line. So my question to you is, how many is enough? Is it 2, 5, 10? You asked the question, how many is enough? Anybody? Part of leadership is being proactive, taking measures because of the real situation today. We see more people on the rivers today than ever. And by the way, I'm an advanced swiftwater rescue instructor, advanced kayaker instructor. I teach survival, wilderness navigation, you name it. I'm not here on behalf of paddlers. I'm here on behalf of kids on tubes, because I've seen more kids on tubes in the last 2 years than in the previous 10. And I'm on that river all the time, Tommy. All the time. It's just a matter of time. That day, if it had been a child, and they were all over the place that day, instead of his son who's trained, they got caught up in that trot line, they'd be dead today. So that would be 2. Is that enough? We're asking you to do the right thing. Be leaders. Look at the issue proactively. If there's a 65-mile-an-hour road that runs through town that has for decades, people drive at 65 all the time. But then a neighborhood's built. What do? Do you leave it at 65? Because we haven't had any fatalities yet. Maybe one kid dies. You say, well, it's still just one. One in a close call. Is that enough? You lower it to 20 to 25 because it's the responsible thing to do. And you guys represent this state. All Tennesseans, not just hunters and fishermen. So I ask you, please do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Next speaker.
My name's Courtney Archer. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm here to support the ACA. As you have already heard, I am the mother of Brandon Archer. I lost him Labor Day weekend, Monday, September 2nd, 2019, 3 weeks after he graduated from college, the day before his 22nd birthday. He was out at the Buffalo River with friends. They were canoeing, but they got out to swim. So he's not in that 69 count. My son was swimming in the Buffalo River. And when they found him, he was under 10 feet of water, and they found a trot line wrapped around his leg, his ankle. When I saw my son, I remember the marks in his ankle from the trot line that was there. So I am in here in support of these regulation changes because I lost a child. And if nobody has ever lost a child, you have no idea. It's been 3 years, but it's like it was just yesterday what it is to lose a child who was just beginning life. He had just gotten his job and his career that he majored in and had things to look forward to. But he lost his life that day out simply having fun. So if you can, please make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Archer. Yep.
Courtney, I would just like to say thank you for coming today and sharing that. It matters. And I know that was incredibly tough. And I know a lot of the commissioners will say the same. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Robin Pope, and I'm the Deputy Director for Recreational Boating Safety Outreach for the Coast Guard Auxiliary. I started working in aquatic safety and education more than 4 decades ago, sometimes in a paid role, more often as a volunteer. I've worked with the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators, Boy Scouts, the Coast Guard and Coast Guard Auxiliary, and the American Canoe Association. In these positions, I've helped develop boating safety and education programs used across the country. I've earned the American Canoe Association's highest instructor ratings possible in both swiftwater rescue and whitewater kayaking, and used those to train thousands of students and certify hundreds of instructors, including professional rescuers in this state and surrounding states. And finally, I serve on the National Boating Safety Advisory Committee, a federal advisory committee that advises the Coast Guard on boating safety issues. That background is why I was asked to speak today, but I'm also here because unattended fishing gear nearly killed my son. On May 30, 2021, my then 23-year-old son, David, was paddling on the Nolichucky River as part of a class. The section that he and I were on was used by commercial rafters as well as by recreational boaters and inner tubers. David paddled into a fishing gear tied to a tree limb, suspended above the water and extending out well into the main flow of current. More than 20 feet of the line was above the water. The line was black, positioned against a dark background, and nearly impossible to see until it was unavoidable. As the force of the current pushed him downstream and under the line, unbaited fish hooks nearly 3 inches long, similar to the ones that I'm holding in my hand before you, started to cross his deck and snag his equipment. Fortunately, he's a paramedic. He's trained to respond calmly and confidently in dangerous situations, and he had recently been certified as a swiftwater rescue instructor. He was able to escape because of skill and good luck, but if he had reacted like a 10-year-old on an inner tube, the consequences could have been quite different. Had the hook struck his face or his eyes, he could have been maimed or blinded. Had they struck his throat, he could have been killed, And if they had simply snagged his equipment, pulling him upside down, he would have drowned, entangled by the gear. If you're a parent, I want you to imagine the terror at knowing that your child could have been killed in front of you, participating in a sport that he loves. 7 credible witnesses observed that situation and the line that caused the incident. Those witnesses include a former Army officer, Mr. Fisher, my son, a professional rescuer, a professional outdoor educator who's trained a wide number of fish and wildlife personnel in swiftwater rescue techniques, and myself. All witnesses there agreed that there was no question the line impeded safe navigation and created a clear and immediate hazard for the number of other river users that were there that day. Because half the class had crossed state lines to participate, arguably the line impeded safe navigation engaged in interstate commerce. Surprisingly, the people who created this immediately life-threatening navigational hazard received not even a verbal warning. Instead of the people who removed the line being charged, the person who removed it was charged with interfering with fishing. That's like placing a leg hold trap on a hiking trail and then being charged with interfering with trapping for removing it. This try and change presented earlier would have helped prevent this event. Had the line been more easily visible, no one would have run into it. We would have avoided it. Had it been underwater instead of tension at an angle to the current, we would have avoided it and not had a chance to run into it. We know at least one person, Brandon Archer, died because they were entangled in trot line, and my heart goes out to his mother who's come here today. If my son had not been luckier, he might have joined her. The risks are clear, and I ask you to consider changing the regulations to make them safer for all river users. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Next speaker.
Hello, everybody. I think y'all know me, but I will identify myself as requested. I'm Andrea White. I'm a native Nashvilleian. I spent 40 years in Nashville. I spent the last 4 years as the ACA Tennessee State Director. I'm currently serving as the ACA Southeast Regional Chair, and I currently live in Atlanta. Y'all can forgive me for that. I lived here 40 years. When we partner, great things happen. We have done great things. We've proven that. We've proven that when 2 years ago, when our ACA instructors trained 16 TWRA officers at Buffalo Ridge Refuge. We've proven that when we've sent ACA instructors to becoming in outdoor woman events and toys events for 30 years now. We have proven that when we did this award-winning program for National Safe Boating Week that now other states are wanting to join on board and do and copy you. North Carolina says they're going to do it. We want to partner with you on this too. We have brought you national experts. We have brought you people with personal experience. We've brought you examples of laws from neighboring states that are working. And the judge in this litigation, in a case that came out June 28th, the judge advised the fishermen to make that line more visible and sink it deep. Our regulation does not require that. The judge basically said, our regulation does not meet the standards we should expect of each other for safety. The DA said he supports this language. The Coast Guard has now sent a representative that said they support this language. What Mr. Pope did not tell you, that I happened to find out because I went to a fundraiser recently with some of his superiors in the Coast Guard Auxiliary. His Coast Guard legal counsel directed him to come to testify today when he was asked if he would. They directed him to do so. They're watching. They want to see how y'all are going to react. They want y'all to do the right thing. We all do. We all just want to be partners for what's best for the people using our waterways. We've got more people on our outdoor resources than ever before, and that's a great problem to have. We have phenomenal rivers. We have great outdoor resources. It is a phenomenal source of mental health for our own citizens and for the people who visit our state. It's a source of economic development. You all know this. But we've got to protect them. We cannot allow a situation to continue where we have a regulation that is written in such a way that it literally allows one sportsman to create a lethal hazard for other sportsmen on purpose. We don't have to do that. It's just too easy. We could just take the language the other states have already used and just use that. There's a common ground here that's based on our common values.
We're at 3 minutes. If you could wrap up. Thank you, Ms. White.
Yes, sir. You asked a couple of questions earlier, and if you would allow me the liberty, I think I may have some data that I can share, at least anecdotally, that may help illuminate.
Do you have any questions?
The questions about data and number of incidents.
If you've got some of that data, I'd be happy to listen.
I'm happy to tell you what I can.
Yeah.
I agree with what's been presented so far. We've had one fatality and one documented near miss. What Ms. Archer did not tell you, but she told us earlier today, is that the Perry County EMS that recovered her son gave her the written report that explained it was a trot line. So there is written official documentation of this incident. What Mr. Pope did not tell you is that the investigation into the near miss by TWRA did not question the other 6 eyewitnesses. They didn't ask the guy that got caught in the trot line what happened, and they didn't ask the other 5 eyewitnesses what happened. So the investigation documentation obviously left a little bit to be desired. I had other witnesses that were attempting to come today that were not able to come. And I can tell you anecdotally that there is a lobbyist and an official that affects Tennessee policy all the time who lives on the Collins River and was planning to come tell you about all the trot lines that he runs into on the Collins River abandoned that have trapped wildlife and drowned wildlife, and that he sees them all the time. I have another multidisciplinary instructor and Marine veteran who is going to explain to you about all the abandoned trot lines he finds on the Duck River. We have anecdotal evidence that we know that these things are out there. And we certainly know that the paddlers are out there, and the people swimming, and the people enjoying our waterways. To Mr. Fisher's point, there have been far more kids on tubes on the lower Nolichucky in the last 2 years than ever in the history of that river. Mr. Silvers, the fisherman who set that trot line, in his sworn testimony in the court case, has said that was not an isolated incident. And the raft guides that work that river every day have said to me many times, as recently as yesterday, that was not an isolated incident. These things are out there, y'all. And we have the opportunity to take the preventative measure. I beg you, I'm really pleading with you. Let us partner on this too. Let's be leaders together. I will answer any questions, but that's the conclusion of my comments.
Any other questions from committee members? Ms. White? Okay, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment on the contents of Proclamation 20-10 sport fishing? All right, seeing none, I think the next step here would be just to ask the committee members, or is there any follow-up? Do you have any questions for Chief Thurman? Do you have any further discussion on this proclamation or any motions?
You know, I like to discuss or put on the table, and I don't have a motion because I don't know the proper language. I hadn't thought about that, but it seems to me if there's language that says floating trot lines, that we might consider not allowing floating trot lines in rivers. Now, in a pond or a lake or a reservoir where the water's not moving, I don't know if they even exist, but it seems like that makes sense. And I wonder if the trot line could be, and somebody that runs trot lines, Mike could tell me if a trot line's set, how far away from the bank, could a trot line be set on the bank and be required to be 3 feet underwater, like 5 feet from the bank or 3 feet from the bank, where it goes straight down in the water and stays 3 feet minimum throughout the length of trot line? Is that, I know it's possible, but I'm putting it out there as a, if that trot line goes straight in the water and it's below 3 feet, when you get like 3 or 4 feet from the bank, seems like that adds some protection. It also seemed like if the trot line is there, it should be required to be at least 3 feet underwater. And what would be the problem with having a float to mark it so they would know that there was something there? I mean, and that may upset the fishermen. I don't know whether they like to keep them where the people won't cut them and steal them. I don't know if that's a problem. I'm just throwing those comments out there for consideration that we might think about.
Chairman.
Mr. Blue?
Yeah, I concur with Commissioner Cox. Looking at the memorandum that these folks handed out from the ACA on 1, 3, and 4. 1, the floating of colored markers. 3, the submerged at 3 feet below the surface. And number 4, no trot line may be placed so as to cause a hazard or constitute, a public safety issue. It's kind of like reckless driving, I think. I'm not telling you what exactly can constitute recklessness, but if it is deemed reckless by the officer, that might give them a little leeway. I understand there's some gray area there. But, I don't think any of these things are bad ideas. I know, Kent, you didn't like the parallel thing. I've run trot lines for years with my dad. Years ago. I've never ran one on the Buffalo River, but I've floated the Buffalo River a few times in my life, and I stayed outside the canoe more than I was in the canoe, and some of that was by design. But and if I'd been floating down the Buffalo River, I could have got tangled up in the trot line. I never have, but I could see how you could do that very easily. I don't know if anybody's ever got a hook stuck in them pretty good, but can't get it out. You're there. I've stepped off the back of a deck of a boat and stepped on a hook in the bottom of the boat, and that was a trip to the ER. Thought I could pull it out, but you can't. So I think some of these things make common sense. I think canoeing and kayaking is an industry that is blown up just as big as these OHV and side-by-sides. Everybody's doing the trail riding thing now. It's becoming a popular sport, and so is canoeing and kayaking. I don't do a lot of it. I do a little kayaking on Kentucky Lake, but I don't go down the rivers. So I think these things that they're asking for make good common sense. 1, 3, and 4. I'd like to hear some discussion on the committee about the parallel deal, if you're for it or against it, and why.
Thank you for those comments, Commissioner Cox and Blue. I've got a couple of comments just in thinking of those. I spent some time prior thinking about it, and I ran trot lines growing up, always in, rivers and lakes. But in rivers, I never saw or had any friends or saw another sportsman or woman run a floating trot line in current, because we just couldn't. It's like putting decoys in current. Sticks and logs get tangled in it. And I'm not sure that floating trot lines in current, where paddlers usually are, and that's what we're talking about, rivers, is really very common at all. And Chief Thurman, you can comment on that in a moment, but putting floats every 25 feet or every 25 hooks, on a river is, as a practical matter, is not practical. I don't even know how you can do that without it getting washed away and potentially creating another hazard. So I want to be careful that we consider the ramifications of making changes that are not practical and don't even matter. The other thought I had is, I like it being 36 inches deep, but what if I want to fish in 35-inch water? What if the river level changes overnight? Maybe I want to fish, maybe I think the catfish are at 33 inches today. What if I want to fish on that bottom? Then I can't because of a 36-inch limitation. So I think we got to be practical and allow fishermen to coexist with the paddlers and just do the best we can. Not throwing rocks at your ideas, just want to discuss some of the cons as over legislating potentially things that are impractical. But any other committee members would like to comment?
Yeah, Commissioner.
It's a great discussion. Okay.
So it seems to me entire proclamation 2210, there's not much discussion except for this section relative to trot lines. Would you like me to make a motion that we approve the entire proclamation except this section and put together a task force to study these recommendation and potential changes? So clearer minds, and Commissioner Wright, you bring up some great points. Commissioner Blue, you bring up some great points. I don't think it's appropriate just to quickly respond and make that decision today, but let's get it right for the safety of the paddlers and the fishermen, and let's get it right and understand these different things that need to have some consensus on there. So is that appropriate that I make that motion?
Commissioner Grammer, thank you. Let me ask council, would the best way to proceed be to take action on the proclamation and come back and take further action? Or would the best way to proceed is to make a deletion of certain parts and come back?
You could do either way, Mr. Chairman. You could strike what you don't want to approve in the current proposed proclamation, and we can ensure that the prior language exists relative to this issue. And then at the next committee meeting, we can bring specific to this issue revised language, if that's what the committee wants to do.
Okay, for clarification, the proclamation includes some restrictions that we did not have. And so it is an improvement, just not as far as some of the public would like to go. So we could come back and do another proclamation to add, or we could have an amendment to add additional today. I think it's up to committee members if y'all want to make amendments to add additional today, or make a motion to pass what we have today and come back. It's up to y'all.
Yeah. My intent, Chairman Wright, was just to make sure you've got a lot of different information being presented from the staff, the paddle boarders, and I just think it's a lot of new information that needs some more study and clarification to make sure we get it right. And one meeting, 2 meetings is not going to, it will make a big difference because we want to get it right. We don't want to harm this side or that side. We want to get it right. And seeing 2 bold changes up here, 4 changes right here, and you brought up some great points. Quite frankly, I wouldn't be prepared today to make a decision one way or other. I'd like more study on the matter.
Yeah, I would agree with that with Commissioner Granberry as somebody that's still learning a lot about trout lines. I didn't grow up running trout lines. I'm the worst fisherman on the commission by far. Most of the stuff I've learned about the paddlers and the kayakers and everything else has been from the public. And so if we can get more information about that would be really helpful to me.
I'll second that motion. If it calls for it.
If I could give the floor to council just for a moment for clarification.
So just so I can make sure we all understand what the motion is, the proclamation, there are essentially 2 additions to the proclamation that this really is being considered. And I'll read those into the record. Sport fishing trot lines, limb lines, and jugs must be checked at least once every 24-hour period. Trot lines cannot extend more than 3/4 across any stream, river, chute, or embayment. That's the change from the current standard that's being proposed. So if I'm understanding the motion is, we need to be clear on what that motion is. Is the motion to not go forward with that language and to come back later after review, or is the motion to accept this language subject to further and additional revision?
My motion was to not do any changes whatsoever until further study involving both what staff recommended and what the public has recommended, till we can get to a consensus. And just not, not piecemeal. Let's do it all at once.
Would you consider putting a time limit on that?
I would
I
suggest
think,
that we get it done
I
by
personally
next
think we need to vote today. But if the consensus is we need to study a little more based on what they've proposed, I'd say January.
No, I said the next meeting.
Okay. All right, fine.
Was my.
I'd like to see us adopt these additional restrictions because they do add some of the things that the public wants, and then we come back and add additional, should that be the will of the Fisheries Committee. But I'd like to see us act and at least add these things. They have to check it once a day instead of every other day. And that's just my personal opinion. But we do have a motion on the floor. I mean, excuse me, we have a motion for an amendment on the floor. And do we have a second to that from the Fisheries Committee?
Second.
No, wait a minute, whoa. His amendment was to table it until January or approve it, except with the
Only
exception.
this section of the entire proclamation.
So you're taking it out and leaving everything like it was.
All the other sections.
If that were what Commissioner Granberry would like to do, he'd have to withdraw his motion, but we have a motion.
So what does legal say about this? What,
Yeah, we need to
so
restate.
are you suggesting we go ahead and approve what we got?
I can't suggest you approve. The question is.
Well, I'm saying what I'm asking is can we do this? Go ahead and prove what has been presented today and then come back and amend what we are going to study over the next 30 days and then amend it next month? Or should we just table the whole 9 yards?
That's really your decision of whether or not these changes are the movement in the direction the commission or the committee would like.
So that's what I was going to ask the chief of fisheries here. Should we table this entire proclamation, or do you need to be in a timely manner, go ahead and approve these regulations to all these other lakes and length limits and the specifications on the bass? And should we go ahead and do that today?
Well, Commissioner Blue, to be clear, I was only suggesting you take the trot line part of the proclamation out and go ahead and approve the entirety of the rest of the proclamation.
Okay.
But I'm not sure you. Well,
So let me clarify. What I heard is if you can vote to not accept the recommended changes related to trot lines as they're presented, which means myself and the chief will strike this, so you'll have a new clean copy as referred to the full commission, or you can approve the language as presented, and with the caveat that there's more work by the agency to do in the future. We're indifferent and we serve at the pleasure.
Chairman Wright?
Yep, so I'll
May I say
defer
something?
to Commissioner Granberry, who made the motion. Would you want to withdraw, or would you want to continue with the motion with the second you have to remove all language from the proclamation that has to do with trot line regulations?
I'd let it stand because I think we just need to look at it in its entirety and not start piecemealing a couple things today, a couple things tomorrow, because there might be some things relative to 3/4 across the river, all those different things that need to be looked at. Let's look at it in its entirety. That was my intent. I was just trying to say, we've got 4 new things here. We got 2 new things here. We've heard a lot of very nice public comments from both sides we learned some things about what a floating trot line was in the practical sense. I just think it'd be important on this commission to get it right, and to wait till January to get it right is not asking too much.
So your amendment is to approve the proclamation, but not approve section 8, section 13.
Correct.
He didn't give that as an option. You can't take it out. You can approve it like it before the changes, or you can approve it with the changes.
We can strike it. The
You
committee
can take the whole section out.
We can take the section being proposed, and I'll read it into the record again. Sport fishing trot lines, limb lines, and jugs must be checked at least once every 24-hour period. That's not currently in proclamation, so that's being added. And then trot lines cannot extend more than 3/4 across any stream, river, chute, or embayment.
That's the part you would strike.
You can either strike it.
But what Commissioner Granberry wants to strike the whole section, is what I'm hearing.
Only the 2 changes that are proposed.
Okay, all right.
Only the 2 changes, because
you're right. He did say
currently
all.
what's there is there. This is the recommended changes by the staff.
Yeah, I'd prefer to leave those in and approve it as they presented it and do some more work on it, but that's not your.
Well, Commissioner Woods?
Did any of these guys get an opportunity, or any one of y'all want to get up to speed? I don't know if y'all.
I think we closed public comment.
Public comments, public
Yeah, we-
hearings are closed.
Oh, it's closed. I'm sorry. I didn't know if you got an opportunity before it got closed.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Woods? I mean, Blue?
Hold it.
If we got a motion, are you good? Are we good?
My motion stands and you second it, so.
I second it. Let's go.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on the motion for the amendment?
Are you going to restate the motion?
Clearly restated.
So.
No.
So do you want to
Strike the proposed changes in section 13.
That's the motion.
Yeah, and then take that.
I think they think it.
No, he was clear. Bill, you clear with, the motion I have says to strike the proposed changes by staff on section 13, but the entirety of the proclamation.
I get what you're doing.
Yeah, the other areas will
I
stand.
don't see why we would strike that. I don't know what it accomplishes.
Well, my
You're going
point,
to come back in January and amend it again.
well, you might
You're
come back
probably
with a
gonna leave
different
those in.
amendment to those changes, including what we heard today. I was just trying to make sure we got it right.
Okay,
But
I understand what you're doing. I just disagree with it.
Okay, for committee members, is there any further discussion on the proposed amendment by Commissioner Granberry and the second by Commissioner Blue? No further discussion. We'll vote on the amendment first by roll call. Danette, if you'll call roll of Fishery Committee's members, and if you'll vote yes or no individually. And this vote is just for the amendment to strike those two provisions. Everything else in proclamation 22-10 for sport fishing will be considered next. But this is the only thing he's striking is those two things about trot line regulations.
This is which
And a yes, just for clarity, a yes would indicate you're in favor of the amendment. A no would indicate you do not want the amendment.
You do not want that added to it. The no is, you don't want it added to it. Without. Yeah. Right.
Okay, Monty Blue,
Yes.
Bill Cox.
No.
Kent Woods,
No.
Tommy Woods,
No.
Hank Wright.
No.
4-1 noes have it. Jimmy Granberry.
We missed one vote, and that's Commissioner Granberry will need to vote.
Okay, Jimmy Granberry. 4-2 noes have it.
Thank you, Jeanette. Okay, so that motion fails. Are there any further motions for amendments or for the proclamation as presented by staff?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve proclamation 2210 sport fishing as presented. And that section 13 will be discussed with staff and commissioners for information between now and January, and we will bring it up to amend again in or not amend. We're going to bring it up for action in January.
Do we have a second to Commissioner Cox's motion? Second by Commissioner Woods. Discussion? Further discussion from commission members? Okay, Danette, if you'll do a roll call on the by Fisherman Committee members, please. By name, yes will be in favor of the motion and no would be opposed.
Monty Blue,
Yes.
Bill Cox,
Aye.
Kent Woods,
Ma'am.
Tommy Woods, Jimmy Granberry, Hank Wright.
That's everyone. We have a motion.
Ayes have it.
Okay. Motion passes. All right. The next proclamation for the committee members to consider in the Fisheries Committee will be Proclamation 22-11, the commercial take of fish and turtles, and recognize Chief Thurman to present that, please, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Wright. I'm presenting to you Proclamation 2211, commercial take of fish and turtles. There are a couple of items in this presentation. The non-underlined section that you see here, it's actually Proclamation 2211, commercial take of fish and turtles, Section 1, waters open to commercial fishing. This amendment would allow navigation on the Mississippi River for commercial use, navigation only, from Mississippi River Mile 735 to Mississippi River Mile 745. And that would be the amendment to that section. The next establishes that the only paddlefish available for harvest or legal for harvest are gravid females. And the two bullets there that you see, one is related to the Mississippi River and at 34 inches, and the other at 38 inches in the rest of the state. Those are the proposed amendments to Proclamation 2211. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Chief Thurman. Members of the Fishery Committee, any questions for Chief Thurman for clarification request? All right. Any comments from the balance of the commission that are not on the, or questions? Did you have anything? And then we'll open the floor to public comment. If you would limit your comments to 3 minutes. We reserve the right to limit your comments, especially in case of repetition. And please state your name and where you're from.
Matthew Robinson. I'm from Bartlett, Tennessee. Commissioner Wright, I spoke with you earlier. Can you go back to the first slide?
Yes.
That specifically about that one. Spoke with you about an issue earlier that maybe it doesn't have a whole lot to do with the fishing, but I noticed the boat ramps in the navigable waters of the Mississippi River from above the I-40 bridge. You do have an issue currently here with a boat ramp that is being regulated by the Memphis River Parks Commission. That is basically they are limiting the public's access to that boat ramp. So while I don't have a comment, I do want to bring it to the commission's attention. That boat ramp is being, the use is limited. Think like 3:30 in the morning to 3 p.m. If you want to use that boat ramp outside of those hours, you can't do it. They lock the gate. If you're not back to the boat ramp by 3 p.m., they lock you in. You call a phone number. You wait 20 minutes for them to show up. They let you out. Imagine if you get a call from your wife that one of your kids is sick, or God forbid, something worse. You got to wait 20 minutes for somebody to show up to that boat ramp to let you out. So just wanted to bring that up because it specifically mentions it there. Just want to bring it to your attention and ask for maybe some help with that in the future. Thank you.
All right, let me ask you a question. How long has that been going on?
Since it's been 1 year now. My understanding from speaking with the Memphis River Parks Commission, they did it because there's a lot of, I want to be politically correct in the way I say this, the people who live next to that boat ramp have a lot of influence in this city, and they got with the right people, and we're tired of the folks coming and going from that boat ramp. It's on the border of kind of a rough part of Memphis. You're aware, but for those that aren't, you have a very wealthy community right next to a very poverty-stricken community, and that boat ramp sits right there. So you have one side saying we're tired of seeing this come and go, and you have another side that comes and goes a lot and does whatever they're doing. So that's how we came to the conclusion, not we, that's how they came to the conclusion that we're just going to close it off to appease the people that don't want to see the other people coming and going from that boat ramp.
So they're closing the boat ramp.
The parking lot is closed. That's how you.
Oh, the parking lot's closed.
Yes, sir. It is. You have to enter in through the parking lot to
Right,
get
correct.
to the ramp.
I understand. So they're not, there's no gate at the boat ramp. They're closing the parking lot.
Correct. Well, everything. You cannot access the
I
boat
understand.
ramp.
You can't get in the parking lot. You can't get in the boat ramp.
Correct. Yes, sir. That's correct. It's 3:00. I brought this to their attention last year. I'm a duck hunter, nothing to do with fishing, but I brought this to their attention because I use that ramp. Now, if I want to go scout in the afternoon, I add about a mile to my trip because I'm having to go, down to the Mud Isle or whatever, and that's the most dangerous river that I've ever been on. So I like adding a mile to my trip, especially. Yes, sir.
Time.
Are you asking me or? Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, Shelby Forest to the north, and we've got problems with that one. And there's McKellar to the south, and the Coast Guard ramp in Mud Island Harbor that's sometimes not accessible in my past history, my understanding. Looks like the agency staff could investigate it. I don't know if that's a state ramp or a federal funded ramp, and I don't know if we maintain it. I don't know any of
the Corps of Engineers representative who wished to remain unnamed told me that it was a federally funded ramp.
Good. Thank you for those comments. I think that the smart thing to do is our staff let us investigate, but I think that was not known by a lot of us. Thank you.
Clay Young with North American Caviar. Just a little more information on that boat ramp. There used to be an automatic gate there. So you pulled into as long as you're in there before 3:00, they lock it. But as soon as you pulled up, it opened. Well, somebody stole the whole automatic thing off the gate. So now they put a chain and lock. And it is sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes before they get down there. But, Shelby Forest is a ramp that I really wish the commission would look at this. They fixed the boat ramp. It's great now, but now you have a sandbar in front of it that till you get till about 6 foot on the gauge, you can't even get near the boat ramp. And a few years ago, the Corps put a extra dike up the river that just destroyed that right there. And y'all just spent $250,000 to fix it, and it's like they put the dike in 6 months later, and it ended, using that boat ramp at low water. So,
Thank you, Clay. Any other comments surrounding Proclamation 22-11? Okay, seeing none. Committee members, do you have any follow-up? Other commission members, do you have any questions? Okay.
On the 38-inch fish on the paddlefish, was that, am I understanding that statewide, there'll be no keeping of the male fish from now on?
That's the proposal.
Can you tell the difference? You think all the commercial fishermen can tell the difference? What's the purpose of not keeping the males for meat fish?
This is a proposal that came out of the Commercial Fishing Advisory Committee. It's a measure to add to the sustainability of the fishery.
Okay, if the advisory committee recommended it,
it was recommended by the advisory committee. You just have to use your needle. You stick the fish, you can see the egg if it's there. If it's not, you throw it back.
All right. Seeing no further comment from the public, are there any motions on the floor by Fisheries Committee members?
Make a motion to approve Proclamation 2211.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Danette, if you'll call the roll, please. Yes would indicate in support of the motion and no against.
Jimmy Granberry,
Yes.
Tommy Woods.
Yes.
Monty Baloo,
Yes.
Bill Cox. Kent Woods.
Yes.
Hank Wright.
Yes.
Ayes have it.
Okay, motion passes. Would you like to? Go. Madam Chairman is requesting a short break.
Yes, quickly. Okay. Go right ahead.
Madam Chairman
Proceed.
can apparently hold it.
I move.
No, she can't.
Proclamation 22-12. And just for committee members, I recognize Chief Thurman for his comments. Explaining that one.
Okay, I'm presenting to you Proclamation 2212. 2212 proclaims Lake Hawford as a state fishing area. This basically categorizes this TWRA managed property, just like other places, WMAs and things like that. So it categorizes it as a state fishing area. And that is the proclamation. Any questions?
Any question on fish?
So what all goes along with this? This is only,
This is simply categorizing it as.
oh, it's got nothing to do with
as a
all the
state
other
fishing area.
guidelines that we're going to
No,
approve
no,
on
we'll
that?
see those in rule tomorrow.
Okay, check. Okay, cool. Motion to approve, 2212.
Do we have any public comment on Proclamation 22-12 regarding Lake Halford? Okay, seeing none. Is there any further comments or questions from commissioners, whether on the committee or not? Seeing none, do we have a motion on the floor?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, Danette, if you'll call the roll, please. Yes would indicate in support of the motion for approving Proclamation 22-12. Yet no would be.
Jimmy
Against.
Granberry,
Yes.
Tommy Woods.
Yes.
Monty Baloo,
Yes.
Bill Cox. Kent Woods.
Yes.
Hank Wright.
Yes.
Ayes have it.
Thank you, Danette. Motion passes. Proclamation 22-12. Okay. We'll wait just a moment for our Madam Chairman to return and we'll turn it back over to her. Wait. All right, Madam Chairman, we'll turn the meeting back over to you. Proclamation 22-12 passed through committee.
Yeah, that was quick. Okay. Thank you, Chairman Wright. That you did a great job today.
A little bit
Thank
messy.
you.
I did my
Thank
best.
you.
But
Okay, so that completes fisheries. Do we have any further business to speak about? Anybody have any more questions or concerns?
Is this new
We
business?
did that first.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, we did. On the agenda, it says Casting for Recovery. We did that first, so I believe that completes the fisheries business. So is there anything else that we need to
Yes,
discuss?
Madam Chairman.
Okay, Commissioner Butt?
I'm afraid that I've been negligent in bringing a request by several legislators to the commission. And since we'd had no October meeting or November meeting, then it has been requested of me to bring before the commission discussion about abating of wildlife. And I'd like to bring that before the commission and see if there's any comments or recommendations from the staff as to how that we need to address that, or substantive discussion about that going forward.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just comments, I believe. Yes, sir.
I got a comment. We've been fighting CWD for how many years now and trying to get our handle on it. And all of our biologists and other states have told us that the main cause of the spread of this CWD is because of feeding wildlife. Why we would consider allowing feeding of wildlife right in the middle of one of the biggest disasters we got going on in our state is beyond me. There is no way in the world that I could ever support something like this. If we didn't have CWD, I would be a whole different person. But with all the biologists and their comments and all the efforts that we've put into, I went and saw the incinerator and all the money we went and spent on that just because of this CWD. I just think that right now would be a disaster to put something like that in place. That's my comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Commissioner Greenberry?
Yeah, I would have to agree 100% with you, Commissioner Woods, on that. And even to take it a step further, I watched a sporting show with my grandson this weekend and watched a very famous hunter take a very nice deer over corn. And I just thought it was the most unsportsman thing I'd ever seen, and was really almost disappointed myself for having it on the TV and letting him watch it. I just think it takes away from what true sportsmanship is. You hunt, you don't, bait and bring animals in to shoot them. So I would be 100% in your court there, Commissioner Woods.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Wright?
Just one. I think that a reason for baiting would be to make hunting easier, maybe boost success. And I think that most youth have a great opportunity to harvest deer if they put some effort into it in our state in almost every area. And same with turkeys. And one thing that wasn't mentioned other than the congregation of animals to transmit disease, not only CWD, but many others, would be, aflatoxin poisoning of turkeys. And I think we really ought to listen to our biologists. If there was a real need to provide opportunity for youth and increase their chances of success, that's one thing, but we don't really have that need, and we have a lot of risk. That's my opinion.
I agree 100%.
Thank you.
And another thing to consider in baiting is hunter equity. So whoever can afford the most bait is going to have the most deer on their property.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Excuse me. Director Maxedon, do y'all have any comments on this that you'd like to provide?
Madam Chair, I think the agency would agree with all the comments that was just put forth by the members of the commission, and I think we would agree with everything that was said. We would definitely be opposed to putting out bait for any form of wildlife. If you would like further information, probably in the lack of time today, we would be happy to discuss that further. I could ask Chief Benedict tomorrow if you would like any more further information. We're happy to get him to provide some of that tomorrow. It will take a little bit of time to prep if you want detailed information, but we'll leave that up to the commission to decide that.
Commissioner Jones.
Madam Chairman, would it be appropriate? I know we just went through season setting last summer, and you have to set the hunting regulations in a certain amount of time. And I think in the subject of baiting, there's also some state regulations that we don't have any control over. I think that would be worth getting an explanation from our legal counsel on kind of the legalities of baiting in our state code. Not putting you on the spot. And we could do that tomorrow if that would be helpful.
He's going to gather that statute for us to read tomorrow. So we'll supply that information for tomorrow.
That'd be, that, I
That
think
way
that'd be
we all
helpful
know
for
where,
both us and the,
Right. just to know what the educators on
Right.
exactly what the parameters are. Okay. Commissioner Butt?
I have one other question for discussion about where we talked about all the lakes and what we were doing. When we were at Fall Creek Falls at our meeting there, then I had the opportunity to speak with one of the young men at the baiting, at the station down there and where they get license and permits. And he spoke about the population of otters at the lake and the amount of fish that they were taking out of it. Is that a part of discussion that's taking place from the agency as far as, is that just what happens on those lakes, or is there any consideration of trapping and moving some of those otters from certain lakes where they cause a lot of capture of fish? Chief Thurman, you want to address that?
That's not, we have not looked at otter abundance at Fall Creek Falls or any of those sites. Otters have a pretty wide distribution across the state. And, you know, otters will eat fish, fish will eat fish. And it's not something that we factored into our management.
Okay. Well, I just wonder because as I was watching, you see several otters floating and on their backs and playing with the fish and eating the fish. And is it of the opinion of the agency that that's not a serious consideration because it's going to happen anyway?
You know, the restoration of otters back on the landscape was has been viewed as a conservation success, and you have balance out there. There are other species that eat on fish as well. Otters are pretty visible, and they can have an impact in small areas and in certain settings. But again, it's not something that we've looked at in terms of management at this point. We're focusing on the habitat, the management work with forage management and regulations, and that's where we're at with it.
So in your assumption, predation of otters on fish is not a serious matter in relationship to the success of the population?
I think it's depends on the setting. If you got a small farm pond and you have otters set up shop there, they could work on your fish. If you're running a fish hatchery and they get in there, they could work on some fish. But as far as keeping us from doing our job and being able to accomplish our goals, we don't look at it that way.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Blue. Yes, sir.
Just two things, no discussion required on this whatsoever today, but I would like to, the director and he and I have spoke, and I'd like Joe Benedict to bring some information on our statewide survey on our waterfowl that we're going to send out in February to the January meeting on the questions that we're going to ask for that are going to go out to all the migratory bird permit holders. One, and then two, I would like to ask the director if we could possibly, through our very own Mike Bell, maybe organize another Asian Carp Task Force meeting sometime in the next few months, whenever permits, if we could get that task force back together.
Mr. Blue, we're happy to do that. We'll look at a spring date to try to organize that for the Asian carp. Are you asking for Joe to explain the survey? Let me get some clarification on that.
No, not at this point.
Okay.
Not at this point. Just have some information and what questions we're going to ask, and exactly, is it going to go to the migratory bird permit holders? Maybe bring that in January before it's sent out, I guess, in first to middle of February, correct?
Okay, we'll do. You're asking for that at the January meeting?
Yeah, at the January meeting.
Be glad to do that. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any more comments from the commission? Any comments from the public? Okay. Thank you all, the audience, for being patient with us. And we want to carefully consider everything that's in front of us. So we just thank y'all for being patient. Oh, Danette?
I was just going to say that the bus leaves at 4:45 at the hotel. I think it's Eastern for you.
That's in 5 minutes.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn? All right, We're adjourned.